Welcome back to the Aches, Pains, and Gains podcast. It's one of your co-hosts here, Thomas. This is episode 10, part 2, where the fellas are sitting down with the physiotherapist, the man, the myth, the legend, Blaine Mackie. In episode 1, they left off discussing all things training philosophy in the world of coaching and physiotherapy. Without further ado, please enjoy part 2. The training for like the exercise in the world, like a physiotherapy, like it's not much even now, like going through it and stuff. And then it becomes even more complicated when you're dealing with someone in front of you who's like in pain, right?
Yeah.
And now you're wrestling with like, how do I even like do these basic programming things and
Right.
teach exercise and then make it like salient and important to the person. But you know, at the same time, you're introducing them to something new, which is just hard in general, right?
Mhm.
Like if trying to create like a habit change is like one of the most difficult things, right?
Right.
And you'll even like see like some coaches or clinicians, they'll be making these like 20 exercise workout programs for like one session.
Yeah.
You're gonna do 20 exercises, you know? So now not only are you wrestling with this novelty of being in like a new environment and like doing this new thing, you also have to wrestle with like 20 different movement patterns with these specific exercise parameters and movements and like do this but don't do that and do this but don't do that, and it's too much, I think, for people to actually get that buy-in. And
Yep.
I know like I've changed quite a bit over the years on this, and like just starting low, going slow,
Simple.
and just build it up from there. Because like the base of the pyramid that like Eric Helms, he's this guy that wrote this awesome book on programming. Basically, the base of it is adherence. Without adherence, volume, intensity, frequency doesn't matter.
Yeah.
They're not doing it.
Yep.
So use the frequency that's going to get them in the gym the most.
Right.
And if that's one time a week, that's better. That's certainly better than nothing, right?
Yeah.
And you just don't need much,
Yeah.
you know?
You can write the most like scientifically evidently based program, but if they can't follow it, it's useless.
It's useless.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it sometimes makes that coach feel good because look at this amazing program that I did.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think we even look at that for manual therapy because the manual therapy is how good are your skill set at getting what you need to get? Okay. That's that base. Like, can you feel why this doesn't move correctly? Can you discern that it is an improper movement based on the feel? And that's where I think, again, with manual therapy, it's just sometimes the ability to feel because not everybody has that ability.
Mm-hmm.
I've taught courses where there's people with the same credentials as me, and I'm going, I got to be on my game. And then once I got to the course and I explained a couple of things and I saw and felt what they were doing, I go, oh, okay, I don't have to be on my game. Because if you're not using some of those models on a day in and day out basis and get very proficient, because just because I can teach you to do something doesn't mean that, I understand. Yeah, Thomas understands it perfectly. Doesn't mean you're proficient at it.
Yep. Yeah.
And so that practice needs to occur over time. And I think that's where I'm kind of jotting all about here, but everybody calls themselves a manual therapist. Well, I guess you are.
Yeah. Depends how you define it.
But I don't know how good you are.
Yeah.
So, and again, that's very arrogant, but I do think there's different levels, just like there's different levels of hockey players, different level of NBA players, different level of football players. Some are really, really good. Some percolate to the top. It's no different than the clinicians being a paramedic, doing physio. It's how much. And then that flips back into, okay, what's your passion level? Is your passion level a 6 and you're just kind of getting up and going? Or is your passion level a 10, meaning that you're there for 15 hours, but I only got paid for 10, right? So how much do you want to put in?
Yep.
And that's a big one for me and Mackie Physio, because if you're willing to put in more, you're going to learn a lot quicker, a lot faster, a lot harder.
Yeah. I mean, like we read a lot about this like training stuff just because we care about it.
Yeah.
Too. Like,
yeah.
you know, and it's relevant because I think you're also like working with people. So like you dive into the weeds with like whatever knowledge you have at the time, and you do the best you can with the tools you have, because what you don't know is what you don't know.
Yeah.
And then over time, maybe things don't work. And then it's because of like, you're learning, you learn so much from the person in front of you if you listen, right?
Yeah.
And so if you are just sitting there spinning your tires, it's like maybe start looking elsewhere. Like look for answers somewhere else, right? Try something new, right?
Yeah.
And then so you'll dive in, read a bit of this. And I know personally I'll go through periods of like intense like reading and then and knowledge accumulation and then I'll kind of like it'll come back down and I'll plateau for a while. And then I'll start like, you know, applying some of this and some of that. And some things get thrown out, things get mixed back in. And it kind of, you develop this philosophy and style. And me and Danny, explaining to him at the time I was in music school, basically what we have to do in school was transcribe these solos by these guitarists, right? And different musicians. And by just bringing in things that you heard and interpret and see and hear, you start developing your own sound, right? So like the guitarist John Mayer, he loved listening to B.B. King. He loved listening to, you know, Eric Clapton and Jimi Hendrix, but he has his own sound. There's things you can hear. You're like, that was pretty Jimi Hendrix of you of what you just did there, right? But it's not, you know, it's a totally different thing. And no two people are going to view and hear the same thing the same way. So you kind of develop your own way of doing things. And I think as long as you recognize that there isn't ever one way, and there shouldn't ever be a point where you're like, I know it all, or you know, you're getting definitive answers. You know, I think you can't go wrong, right? Yeah. And there's the saying in Star Wars, like only Siths speak in absolutes, right? Which in and of itself is an absolute statement. It's ironic, but you know, it's true though. Like if someone is giving you absolute answers, right? I don't know if I'm going to trust them as much about things, right? You know, there's tons of that on social media these days, whether or not it's physio related or training related, right?
Yeah, I do see that with training, because I do see a lot of individuals or programs out there that this is the way. And I really struggle with that. And I get a few people asking me, well, that other clinic or whatever does it this way. And I said, that's fine. I said, I don't have a way. Is my answer to a lot of that. My way is trying to figure out what's in front of me and how does that organism going to grow or develop or improve based on what we're doing in front of them. Whatever tools I use, like people say, well, what's a bad exercise? I don't know. I don't know what the definition of that is, because depending on what is needed at the time for whoever is needing it may change. Yeah. I may provide something that I've never given before, but it's in my toolbox.
Yeah.
There's like, because I remember when I started training and lifting, I thought like you couldn't bend your back and stuff. I thought that was bad and whatnot too. And now there's this recent like pushback of physiotherapists on Instagram doing essentially like a Jefferson curl, like an elevated Jefferson curl with limited like knee bending or knee flexion. So what happens is your back winds up in a really, really flexed position.
Right.
But what do they do is over time they progressively load this. And they're not getting hurt. They're getting better at it. They're getting stronger at it. Yeah. And you know what? If you have a job where you have to constantly go into back flexion to lift objects, which there's plenty of laborer jobs out there that do that, why don't you train that position so that you're more resilient in it?
Yeah.
Right?
One of my mentors, Jim Meadows, probably one of the best manual therapists that I know of in the world. And he also mentioned when I was with him, he says, well, we have to train flexion in some cases. The sheep shearers in Australia and New Zealand are hunched over sheep all day long, shearing them. So if you don't train that, you have a problem. Same as the other one that comes to mind is osteoporosis. Oh, you better not twist. So says the Osteoporosis Society. And that came to me from a person with osteoporosis. I says, how do you open a door? Okay, if we don't train you, you're weak in that particular instance, which means the neuromuscular control of that is not optimal, whatever that means, which means the bones and joints are going to take more of the stress, which, that's not a good pathway. Maybe we should train rotation in a very controlled manner and develop that capacity.
Yeah.
There's no such thing as a bad exercise. There's just too much, too soon, too fast.
There you go.
Right?
Yeah.
That's typically what happens with an injury. And even in the world of rehab, oftentimes you have to do the thing that got you injured in the first place through a progressive manner, right? You tore your hamstring, deadlifting or squatting or whatever it was.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, you're gonna have to do that again.
Yes.
But we're gonna build it up slowly this time. And, you know, because otherwise you're not gonna get that function back, right?
Yeah.
So it's interesting where people decide to draw these lines in the sand.
It's capacity build. Like when I tore my left pec, it was a funny story. I was down in South Dakota on the powerlifting team down there, and I had my bench at 370. And then I'm going, well, this is great. So I went back to the gym. It was too soon after a competition, but it was embarrassing. Some of the girls in the gym said, how did your bench press grow so much? And I go, flies. So I grabbed a couple of 110s and I did 2. And then I tore my pec in front of them on
Holy
the third.
shit.
Popped it right out. Arm turned purple.
Oh no.
I was back to benching my arms.
Yeah.
And then the bar. And then but again, capacity over time.
Yeah.
Yep.
And that's the same thing did when I blew my bicep. I was 320, 315 or something. And it was fine. And then just felt it go.
Yeah.
And I was stuck.
Yeah.
So everybody hauls the weight off me and, oh, guess what? Back to benching my arms.
Yeah.
And then the 5-pound dumbbells and then you just build up over time.
Mhm.
Something still tore, but it's adapted.
Yeah.
So yeah, injuries are kind of cool that way. I think you're dead on, you guys, with respects to your philosophy in the sense that, yes, you tore it doing squats, but you're going to have to squat again.
Mhm.
And what a great way to rehab a little, as opposed to let's put you on a leg press. Let's do, I don't know, whatever else there is that may not be particular to the tissue, or maybe it's a good roundabout way. I don't know. I don't know. I love the experiment.
Mm-hmm.
I love the ability to think outside the box and see if we can figure things out that way.
You can't always avoid pain because it's like an integrated part of the human experience, right?
Absolutely.
So if you always avoid the thing that hurts, it's probably going to keep hurting.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, because otherwise you won't become desensitized to it, right?
Yeah. And pain is complex because there's the desensitization, but there's also how your nervous system is responding to that. And psychologically, how are you responding to that? Are you fearful? Are you not fearful? Are you going to work through it? Do you know enough that you can experience that pain and decide whether to work through it or not?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And again, that's where the complexities come in. But at the same time, the enjoyment of the challenge, the puzzle, on helping people kind of navigate through that.
Yep.
So it's kind of good. But they also, again, it flips back to they have to trust you. They have to be, you have to be connected with them in order to go there and being able to do that.
There's like we've talked lots about like programming principles and pain on this podcast too. And when you're dealing with a human, things are complex and many, right? The options, like
100%.
the things that could be causing things are many, and you may not ever be able to truly, I mean, you're likely never able to truly know for sure 100% that this is what's going on necessarily.
Right.
But you chase down a hypothesis, and if it starts working, you're like, okay, that's good. And then some people get overwhelmed with just the fact that there's just too much going on. There's too many interconnected webs of things that could be going on. But like on the other note of things, that means you have a lot of options. So if all these things contribute, that means you have a lot of options to help kind of thing as well.
Yeah, that's kind of a cool concept because I think those options at the beginning of a career, limited options, but the picture's still quite fuzzy.
Mm-hmm.
Like me at the end of my career, lots of options, picture's not as fuzzy.
Mm-hmm.
Because you've been so many experiences that have taught you, and if you've had the passion to learn from it, develop it, dive into it, then later on the actual picture gets a little clearer. It's a little easier to decipher, which is why we like more and more complicated, because I like still climbing the hill.
Yeah.
Yep.
But just stuff like Adrian and Tyler and Nadia, and like those guys have now become a little bit more the teachers, because I'm just sitting back and watching. Oh, okay. I feel like a proud dad.
Yeah.
Okay. So I've got this. I've taught them this. I've taught them to think outside the box. And it's interesting because in our clinic, if they have a difficult patient coming in and they're not able to decipher, then they'll come to me and we'll actually treat them together for free.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody goes in pro bono because this is part of the passion.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Now those guys are actually making me work, and I often don't necessarily offer as much help anymore.
Right.
And that's a cool thing. It was pissing me off at the beginning because I think I should be able to figure this out and fix them and be on their way. Yeah, it's not happening. Excuse me, because they're actually figuring stuff out really well.
Yeah.
And when they're stumped, yeah, it's getting to the point where I get stumped too.
But
What's nice about that is that 2 or 3 heads are now putting together all the ideas. So that that kind of puts it on steroids, right?
Yeah.
So now we can move forward a little bit because we got lots of different ideas coming out. So much fun. So much fun.
collaboration, there's a lot of power in that.
Yeah.
Me and
for
Danny
sure.
will often we'll talk about coaching clients we have and stuff. And
Yeah.
we're like, I don't know, man, I've tried this, I've tried that. This is going on. Like, I don't know what the hell to do. And it's like, well, have you tried this or whatever? And like having another
Having another set of eyes to look at it from a different angle, huge.
helps a lot.
Gold.
Especially like,
Gold.
yeah, because like we said, humans are complicated. And
Well, I think too, sometimes you do get the blinders on, not intentionally, but you go down a pathway and sometimes not able to jump off until, like you said, Danny, another set of eyes looks, oh yeah, I forgot all about that.
Exactly. Yeah.
You knew it was there,
Yeah.
but it just wasn't in the viewpoint finder thing. Yeah. So that's cool.
There's
fun.
this Mike Teixeira, right? The guy that came up with like RPE and RIR and lifting, right?
Yeah.
He has this analogy that like being a coach or like existing in the world, almost like in the world of fitness or rehab, it's kind of like you're in this cave and it's pitch black. You can't see anything. You don't know where to go. You're lost, right? And then having a coach is almost like having someone there with like a pen light, right? And they like extrapolate it out. It's like maybe the cave is always moving because it's not like humans aren't like a stationary thing. So like maybe while you're exploring one part of the cave and you go back to the other, now it looks different, right? And now you have different things to explore in that part of the cave or whatever, right? And then having someone else come into the picture almost adds like an additional pen light, or like they're like, oh, you're looking in the wrong direction kind of thing, right?
Yeah. Which
is a cool analogy because I think that's where a lot of the value of like even physiotherapy and coaches comes in, where it's like, here's like the advice kind of thing that I have, and the pen light is you really drawing upon your previous experiences, your expertise, your education, and things like that, and you can provide this vision to someone who feels lost and maybe even hopeless, right?
I think there's some power in challenging the norm.
Mm-hmm.
I've always liked that term because if something comes in and it's presented as normal, but things are not adding up, do you have the balls to challenge the norm? Nice little clinical example of that is one of my colleagues, actually, a good friend of mine, brought her daughter in, 22-year-old daughter, nurse, severe headaches. And so she went and got an ultrasound. I read the ultrasound. The ultrasound was normal of her neck. Got her neck, felt it. And, something's not right here. Okay, so I'm feeling something that's not cool. And I look back at the ultrasound, normal. Okay, something's not adding up. So if I wasn't or didn't have the balls enough to challenge the norm, I would have left it there and said, I think this is all, I don't know what else to do.
Mm-hmm.
So what we did is I said, okay, this isn't right. I'm going to challenge the ultrasound and the radiologist. Ooh, challenging a specialist, not so cool. So then we challenged that. So I wrote back to the doctor. I said, I need this to be read by this radiologist who knows me. It got done, and he actually phoned me. He says, so I had a special request. And I said, yep. And he says, so Blaine, what did you find? I said, what'd you find? And he goes, well, you first. I said, well, there's a mass in the craniovertebral area on the right. And I said, when I looked at your colleague's ultrasound, they said normal. And I said, I'm not buying that. Something's wrong here. He says, well, I'm glad you did. They found a mass wrapped around her vertebral artery.
Oh.
Yeah. And so she got sent for emergency neurosurgery by two of our neurosurgeons here in town. They had to dissect the area and unwrap the mass from the vertebral artery. And everything went perfect.
Oh, wow.
And came out, no headaches, returned to nursing, everything well. But if somebody didn't have the gumption, strength, confidence to challenge the norm in whether it's coaching, whether it's clinical, whether it's paramedics, it doesn't really matter. You got to be prepared to ask the question, but you also have to be prepared to get your ass kicked because you pushed too far and somebody didn't like that,
sure.
right? Because somebody doesn't like being challenged, and that's fine. But I think those are important as we move forward too, so that if somebody's still presenting clinically or on the coach's radar that something's not right, can we figure it out? And so that's again right back to having another eyes set of looking things and then going from there. So those are just some of the clinical things. Those are fun though.
It's like
those are fun.
You don't necessarily need to always be right either.
No,
like you need to be okay with being wrong.
Yep.
And I think that's something that comes with experience and that the humility kind of helps breed that as you get, I find like clients put me in my place more frequently than anyone else, right?
Yeah.
Because, you say something, you approach something not quite the right way, and you hope that you've opened up a space enough that they're going to be honest with you kind of thing, and where they can kind of put you in your place, and you're going, yeah, you're right. I did not approach this the right way or whatever. And like, thank you for that, right? You could double down. Some people do that. They get defensive, right? I think
it's a fairly natural response that
Mhm.
maybe when you sent to that special request to the radiologist, they might have instantly felt like, like, screw this physio. Like he doesn't know what the hell he's
Yep.
talking about.
Yep.
Right. But like at the same time, like I think it's so important to remain like, humble and just understand that you're not always going to have the answers. And it's okay to also bring the person, I think, along with you on that ride as well. Right. Because people can smell bullshit. And when you're lying, right.
Yeah.
And if you're going to fake it, I don't think people are going to stick around long. Right.
No.
And certainly not long enough for you to work.
Mhm.
Well, I definitely like the fact that when somebody's done at our clinic, we've turned over every rock, we've checked off every box so that it's going to be hard for anybody to say they didn't do a good job. So I want to make sure that we've checked everything
Mhm.
along the way. Part of it's probably my lack of self-confidence is that I don't want them going off to somebody else and then they found something really easy that fixed it. Oh, shoot, I missed it completely.
Mhm.
But I'm glad the patient got better, obviously,
Yeah.
but I want to make sure I flip over all those rocks
Yeah.
so that I'm making sure that when they're done or I'm finished, I'm going, this is your problem, or I don't understand it. It's got to go to another level.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's like with the whole thing of like it's okay like to be wrong kind of thing,
Yeah.
and going back to the whole pen light, it's like you're seeing a certain area of the cave, right?
Yeah.
But you can tell them too, like, hey, I can't see the whole cave. I actually don't know the whole cave. So,
Yeah.
but if you're willing, like, I'll walk with you through this cave,
Right.
kind of thing,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Like, and if you don't keep someone in the dark and you bring them along with you and
Yeah.
just explain, like, I'm thinking this. Are you willing to try it, or what are you thinking? It's like going back to the whole like asking for permission thing.
Yeah.
I think it goes a long way, and most of the time, like, people are okay with that, especially when you explain like the human body is really complicated, and unfortunately, despite what some people led you to believe, like it's hard to just have an answer all the time instantly. Some coaches will be like, "Oh yeah, this is your problem." It's like you have you got weak glutes because you got knee valgus going on, right? It's like, well, sometimes it's more of a more complicated question than that. Maybe they have knee valgus going on because they got really strong adductors and they're just helping out in hip extension or
Mhm.
something like that. It's a very common one in powerlifting. It's like you go to a physio, it's like, oh, your glute med's weak. It's always the glute med, right? Sometimes, sure, but it's not always the glute med, right? It's, maybe you strengthen the glute med, but their squatting pattern doesn't change at all. But maybe the valgus is giving them knee pain. Maybe it is something that you should be modifying. But their glute med's now technically strong or whatever, but it's still got an issue. You're going to keep hammering the glute med, or you're going to start looking elsewhere, right? And it's like you could just lie and be like, "Oh yeah, you're not built for squatting," or give them like protect your own ego or something. And you shouldn't do powerlifting because you're going to have knee pain forever, kind of
Yeah.
thing. Or you can be like, we tried the glute med and I don't think it was the correct thing. I think I was actually wrong on that one, right? And I think if people appreciate the humility aspect more than our initial reaction to being wrong, as is appreciated, right?
Mhm.
Because I think the world we have doesn't allow for mistakes. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
it's percentages in school. Like you passed or you failed, right? It's like
Yeah.
it's almost frowned upon to like be wrong, right? But you learn so much more from your failures. Like going back to your origin story, the failure after failure after failure, and you just learning how to work hard through failure, right? And then that kind of builds its way up to this success, right? And
Yep.
if you base yourself in that, I think it's hard to be wrong.
Yeah, and I think if you catapult on that is the fact that I don't think our society or us as individuals are really good at asking for help.
Yeah.
And I think that's a big one. And I will always, I will oftentimes ask the patient for their help
Yes.
to try and figure this out. It
Mhm.
is a team. And this is where I ask them, I want you to become a physio. What does that mean? I need you to help me figure this out
Yeah.
because I need your mind tuned into it. Don't just walk out of here blind. I need you walking out here thinking of evaluating and assessing to give us more to figure out why isn't glute med strong? But it is the primary indicator of this problem,
Mm-hmm.
but it may not be the indicator.
Mhm.
So we have to figure that out. But I need help.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's a big part of it. And if we can get those patients and clients involved in that, and again, it goes full circle back to what kind of rapport do you have with them?
Mm-hmm.
What can you do with that? And even just the fact that I had one of my clinicians the other day, she said, I felt fine for the first time in just sitting back and thinking.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have to fill the space with voice or direction or consultation or anything. I just sat back and thought, and I said, congratulations. It's okay to sit back and just think. But as a new grad, you often come out thinking, oh, I'm okay. He might think I don't know what I'm doing because I'm not saying anything. I'm not filling the time. I'm not being instructional, et cetera, et cetera. No, it's good to think. So I'll often in my room just go to a corner and lean into the corner and just sit. Just think.
Yep.
Okay, said this because I got to put together why isn't it glute med anymore? Well, glute med doesn't make sense. He's doing this. I've tested it. It's strong. So the textbook doesn't give me that part 2 or part 3 of the problem here, thinking outside the box. So that's a big part of all that whole philosophy thing and being able to think that way. And it's a lot of fun.
It is.
It's a lot of fun.
There's a big push to never be wrong, I feel like. And like to feel like to prove yourself and to know what you're doing. You can see this with certain personal trainers too. Just like if you listen in to the conversations and they'll just be like using all these big words and selling themselves and the client's just like sitting there like, man, like I don't care. Like, you know what I mean? Like you don't need to do that. I think like the thing that exudes confidence is you can just kind of sit there. You know what I mean? And like, and again, like you're going to learn a lot from the person that you're with and stuff. And that'll kind of show you the way. You probably felt like this when you started coaching. Hey, like you just had to prove that you knew what you were doing, right?
Well, I think I had less of that with you guys because like we were all friends already. But like as soon as I got like that random person that signed up, then I was like, man, I gotta like prove them that I know what I'm talking about and like that I've done this before. Because like that was the last thing I wanted to do was like come across as like them being my first client. You know what I mean? So
you had to pee on the tree.
What?
You had to pee and show your territory. This is my territory. This is who I am.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think
didn't get that analogy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mark your territory. It makes sense though.
Yeah. No, it's good. Yeah. It's good. Yeah.
Right on.
Yeah, that's good.
Is there anything else we really wanted to cover today? I know we went through a lot, and I think we touched on pretty much everything I wanted.
I'll tell you what we missed.
What did we miss?
Aches, pains, and gains.
Oh yeah, we usually start the podcast.
We started off quite heavy, so I didn't want to interject.
Oh dear,
that's a good point.
No.
That's my fault.
No. It was perfect. But usually
we go with the flow around.
Yeah.
Here.
Whatever happens, but usually at the start of the episode, we'll go around the table, and we'll just go through our aches, pains, and gains. So Blaine, how have your aches, pains, and gains been going
lately? Any aches, pains, or gains to report in like kind of regards?
So like, how's your training going? Are there any aches or pains that you're experiencing or gains? Like just
okay, okay. Training's going well. Again, I'm really invested into the autoregulation. So basically, it's easy on me psychologically because I'm not walking into the day knowing what I'm going to be doing.
Yeah.
So that's kind of cool for my gains. And it's been working actually quite well. There might be days that, or weeks on end, I'm just sitting at 3s.
Yep.
Over and over because everything's just feeling good. And all of a sudden, not so good. And I will take it to 8s or just not do as much. We were away last week, new gym. That's always a bit of a fight for my ego because I want to show everybody in the new gym how strong I am.
Of course.
But then you're working with shitty equipment.
Yeah.
There's no knurling on the bars. So I'm having to strap up in a double overhand grip, which is not my grip. I'm a reverse grip. So all those things go through and then you find out you're aching after because it's just not good. So that's aches. What else? I'm still battling right shoulder, but it's coming along really nicely. I was a little worried because it tore and didn't care. Didn't want to get an ultrasound. I didn't want a diagnosis.
Yeah.
I knew the tissue was gone. Now I just had to adapt it up. So I'm still working through that. And usually that's coming along quite nicely, actually. So gains, aches, pains. So pains, I think that's outside of my chronic pain. I don't even, that doesn't register.
Yeah.
Gains, good. So I did 300. My best bench right now is 305 since the tear. So I'm fighting back towards 330. If I can get that. Luke's blowing by me. Yeah, so I'm just, and anyways,
Yeah.
that's a different story. Humbling.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he's benching 350 quite easily right now. So that's really good. So I'm super excited for him.
Yeah.
Deadlifts is going actually interestingly well. You guys will laugh at me, but keep it low. I've just figured out neurologically how to load my feet. So that's been a really encouraging, because when I don't load my feet, it's a back lift.
Yeah.
So I'm really working hard at that. And I pulled 530, which is way above what I've ever pulled before.
Is that on a barbell or a hex bar?
Barbell.
Barbell?
So part of my goals is when I was down in the States in gear, I think I was 29. I did a 515 squat in gear,
Mhm.
525 deadlift in gear, and a 370 bench in gear. Oh, that was a funny story. I was in the gym and it was a gym number.
Yeah.
So I did 370 in the gym. I got this. I'm going to kill the South Dakota States. So I went to there. I just learned what peaking was. I peaked in the gym. I got pinned with 330, 340. You couldn't get it off me.
Yeah.
And I couldn't go down.
Yeah.
So that was the end of the meet.
Oh, shit.
Oh, it was funny. So that was fun. But anyways, the whole concept of this and this is my longevity direction, is I'll be 60 next year.
Yeah.
Is that I want to be stronger next year.
Mm-hmm.
And because one of my goals is to show people that, no, this whole aging thing, be careful what you say. Okay. So as you get older, my goal is to beat. So, so deadlift now is 530. At Westerns, I did 500 and I cried.
Yeah.
Because I've been struggling to get to that 500.
Yeah.
And then I hit 530. I'm repping with 500 now. And so I've beat my all-time best in gear back when I was 30 years younger.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, 30 years younger.
Wow.
Barbell back squat, I did 515. So I doubled 520 just a while ago and felt really good. And everybody knows my bar stool depth. It was actually quite good. I was quite happy with that. I was surprised. So that was good. And then bench, I am a little away from 370, and I don't know if I'll make that, but I'll work away at it and go from there. So those are my gains. And so my goal and I'll say this publicly, I hope I can make it. I am going to try and do a 600 squat when I'm 60. So 600 at 60 is my goal. So that's my goal. Obviously it won't be at the depth that I won't need, but if I can load it and I can drop down into something that's respectable
for sure.
at that age, I'll be happy with that. Deadlift, I still like to get up close to, I know that's weird. My deadlift has never been a good thing. So that's why I was doing glute hams. I'm trying to really load those to see if I could connect.
Yeah.
And we go from there. So it's an experiment for me.
Yeah.
I'll always check in to see what my body's going to do and trying to figure things out, because sometimes I don't know why I can't. So I got to figure that out. So I'm self-experimenting as I go through there. I think that's what I've taught Luke too, in order to experiment through some of this stuff in order to get there. So aches, doing pretty good that way. Pains, just my right shoulder.
Yeah.
I think everything else is okay right now. What I did learn for deadlifts, how somebody will touch and go?
Yeah.
Yeah, if I touch and go, I have an instability in my lumbar spine and it slips.
Yeah.
And so it's got to be a dead stop, re-hit, stop, re-hit.
For sure.
That touch and go, if that hits just a minute off, that segmental stability of the lumbar spine doesn't cut it. It can't do it.
Yeah.
So that's fine. But the bounce is nice because you can just get more reps.
Of course.
Whatever. So aches, pains, and gains.
Yeah.
I think that's it. Yeah. So I think watch out, be prepared, because I want to hit those numbers when I'm 60, and then hopefully I can hold those into my 70s, 80s, and 90s. It's really, really cool. Actually, you know what? My mother-in-law, I have to mention her, Martha, Darcy's mom.
Yeah.
She actually started a powerlifting program, and I put her on this. It was so cool. She's, I think she's 89 right now. And she's pulling 100-pound dumbbells.
Wow.
Or 100-pound kettlebells off the ground. And just loving it. Just opened up her entire life.
Yeah.
She's a beast.
That's incredible.
So I'm hoping for over 100-pound deadlift with her when she's 90.
Nice.
So one of those
awesome.
ones you see on Instagram or whatever, but it'll be cool. So that's my whole life.
Cool.
Yeah.
Do you think you'll ever, or do another like powerlifting competition? I know. I know the story behind that.
You know the story behind that.
Yeah.
For
those, he went to straighten his arm and
it's broke.
Yeah. And I remember when I started, you were competing at one of the Synergy meets.
Yep.
And there was a whole like situation because it was a bench, right? And you couldn't lock your elbow out, and you kept getting. I can't remember if you were getting the start command and you just would get red lighted because you couldn't lock out, or you wouldn't even get the start command. Yeah.
No.
And he was like, "What the fuck?" He was like trying to straighten, and they wouldn't give it to him, which is like, come on.
But you know what? It's the rules, right?
Yes.
And so once you start doing some variations to the rules, it's
a slippery slope.
It's a slippery slope.
Yeah.
So I get it.
Yeah.
Was I frustrated and pissed off?
Of course.
100%. Because I owned the SAS record for a while.
Yeah.
But I would get 2 whites and a red.
Yeah.
And this time at Synergy, I got no start.
Yeah.
So then it kind of deflated my ambition to compete at that point in time. Because if I'm going to go in, and am I accurate? Like if I don't get bench lift, then nothing really counts.
That's right.
Right. So there's no point.
Yeah. Like if you got say a squat record and then you bomb out on deadlifts or bench press, it's disqualified the whole thing. Yeah.
So it does not really worth it. So I can do my own thing in my own gym and video it.
For sure. Absolutely.
And because if nobody believes I did that 520, I'll have to show you. But anyways, so it's so that's where I'm kind of at. I enjoyed competing. It was fun. The whole event and just the people.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the things I found in the States, because I was pretty much I called myself a power bodybuilder down in the States.
Power builder.
Yeah, power builder.
Yeah.
And I would just lift really heavy as I could. And so that's where the powerlifting team that was there, we trained kind of at the same time. They said, do you want to try this? I said, never done it before. But holy, what good people.
Yeah.
What really good people. It wasn't ego based. It was just fun.
Yep.
Just a great, and then we had suppers together. We were enjoying, and then it became the friend group, right?
Yeah.
And we went from there. So that was super powerful. And I find that even today, going to a meet, everybody's willing to help. It's just,
There's something about like the meets in Saskatchewan. I think it's because we're like obviously a smaller organization compared to like Alberta,
right?
Ontario.
Yeah.
Everybody knows everybody.
Yeah.
And just
a good vibe.
The good vibe.
The sport of powerlifting. Let's be serious. Let's be real. It's not that serious. And everyone's there to have a good time and help each other. And it's a unique sport, I think, among other sports. It's like you wouldn't get that in football. You wouldn't get that in anything.
Well, you wouldn't
else.
You wouldn't consider powerlifting a team sport, but it kind of is in a way when you're in the warm up room and everybody's kind of helping each other, and
for sure.
It is good.
Yeah.
So competition wise, probably not.
Yeah.
I think I'm busy enough now, and just the concept of me not being able to complete a lift.
Yeah.
It's I'm just wasting people's time.
For sure. Do you think your son Luke will compete?
Luke right now, thanks for the question. He's definitely got the potential, but his sole focus right now is soccer.
That's fair.
So he's benching heavy, but he's not doing a pile. Like the way we trained him, he was interesting as he came up because he was super coachable from age 3.
Yeah.
And so I had him Olympic lifting back then. Not that I'm an Olympic lifter. We kind of went through the movements.
Yeah.
But a lot of powerlifting. He came down and competed with me in California. That was kind of a fun adventure. My oldest daughter discontinued gymnastics. She was kind of at her peak. And she says, I don't think I'm going on to the Olympics. What else do you want to do? Can I lift with you? Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
So she started, and then the whole family decided to start lifting. So we had our family lifting time. And I said, do you guys want to do this for real? And they go, what do you mean? I said, well, do you want to compete? We could actually train up to a competition and go. And they said, yes. And I said, well, let's make it fun. We'll go to California.
Yeah.
So I have a friend of mine, Chip. He owns a gym down there, and he was doing Western Championships down in Sacramento. So we flew down, and that was our first family competition. I think it's still on YouTube today. And we all competed.
That's
Wow.
so cool.
It was interesting because none of the other 4 had competed. Luke was 8.
Yep.
And then my daughter was 12 and then 16, 13, 16, something like that. And then Darcy, poor Darcy, she doesn't do stuff in front of people.
Mm-hmm.
And that night in the hotel, was it that night or the next morning? I think it was the next morning. She got her singlet. That's never very positive for a female.
Yep.
And so she was sitting on the bed just oscillating. There was tears.
Yeah.
She was oscillating. But we got there and it was, all respect, Chip, the meet was just a disaster because they allowed walk-in registrations
Oh, yeah.
same day.
Boy.
Whoa, that's cool.
That's a lot.
Yeah. And so that meet started at late 8 in the morning. We finished like 2 in the morning.
Oh my
Like it went all the way. It was like so long.
What's
Wow.
Chip's last name?
Conrad?
Oh my goodness.
No, Chip.
That's that's your friend?
In
Chip
Sacramento?
Conrad? Yeah.
I think so.
You don't know who that is?
I just want to say.
If I see a picture, maybe.
No. You know who Chip Conrad is.
Do I?
Yeah, man.
Pull it up.
I'm hoping it's the right last name.
Yeah, he's been involved in like strength sport for like forever.
Forever.
Yeah.
He wrote some books on the strength history. Anyways, so
I'm sorry, it's not ringing any bells.
Really?
Yeah, man.
Okay. I'll pull it up as we
pull it
chat
up.
here.
anyways, yeah. So we, I don't know where I was going with this. So we competed. Oh yeah, that was a funny story too. Family parenting 101 is that my one daughter, who sometimes will get sick when she's nervous, got sick.
Yep.
I said, no, you're good. You can do this. Pushed her through it, and then that night got worse. Next day got worse. Short story long, we got her home, got her to the hospital, had her appendix out. So dad pushed her through a powerlifting meet with appendicitis.
Oh my God.
So never to be.
It could have been disastrous. I guess.
Oh yes, yeah,
Wow.
it was bad.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Luke started then, and so he broke a world record at 8.
Wow.
Not
What
a lot
did he lift?
was he a 135 deadlift at 8 years old? 140?
Wow.
Something like that. But but again, how many 8-year-olds are competing, etc. So, but
Five of them, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it was fun. They kept that for a little while. I think Jordan broke some world records again at her age and time, and I don't think they're up anymore. But then Luke. So we continued. Luke just continued to train. Little kid, he loved being the strong guy in the class, etc. We really went with the Russian component, where just let's get you involved in a whole bunch of stuff. So he did really well in wrestling, did a little bit of basketball, a little bit of skating, but it wasn't his gig. Lots and lots of soccer, lots of powerlifting. And so we just opened up his nervous system to all these different things. And then from there, he just took off with the strength, and his movement patterns were really good. So that was fun. Yeah. And then, so right now, definitely he's heavily into the soccer at the Huskies. Yeah. And then I suspect once that's over, he'll settle right into the lifting.
Nice.
Because he's just so disciplined with it. So I can see him, like he's 6'2", which I'm not sure where that came from, but 6'2", and he's about 180. And he's got probably 50, 60 pounds he can put on his frame. So he'll be a big boy. He'll be strong.
Crazy.
There's usually like 2 types of people I find that wind up in, like it sums up the vast majority of people in powerlifting. It's like one group of people winds up there because they're looking for a refuge after sport ends. Right?
Yeah.
A lot of sport ends for people at some point in time.
Yeah.
Most don't go to like the pro levels or any further. Like when I was a wrestler for the Huskies, like there's no career after that, right? So like, what are you going to do after? And most of these folks have these strong competitive ambitions. Yeah. And then there's the other like camp of people that have never been good at a sport before. Maybe didn't do very many sports in general. Never been told that they could do sport, but they kind of stumble into lifting. And then they're like, if you enjoy like squat, benching, and deadlifting, there's a whole sport designed around those 3 movements. And then they wind up there from that camp. I don't know if you would agree, but like that's usually what I see is one of those 2 camps, right? Yeah. There's some in between, but
you know what I see though, the majority, and this is just my opinion, is that they finish those sorts of things and then just peter off.
Yeah.
Just peter off. And I look at that because of the basic population, right?
Yep.
The majority of the population is not there.
Yeah.
Yes.
So somehow they petered out of whatever competitive sport they were and just didn't have that discipline, passion in order to fulfill that. You know what? I love going to the gym 3-4 times a week.
Yep.
So,
Or
Yeah.
you could look at it as like burnout.
Yeah, like how do you
And-
train for non-performance goals,
Yeah.
or just to do it because for the process versus like that speed outcome in
Yeah.
soccer or
Yeah.
the power outcome
Yeah.
or whatever, right? Like,
That was actually interesting. That's a nice thing is that soccer, that's how we train Luke. It was all for nerve speed.
mhm,
It wasn't about the conditioning, but it was about how heavy can you lift to transform that into speed of the sprint.
Mhm.
Oh, it was a nice combination. It
mhm.
was a beautiful combination. So there's a lot of clinics out there that'll do the sport specific stuff.
Yep.
I don't even know what that is. To be honest, I really don't because I don't know every sport.
Yep.
I'll get you strong. I'll get you stupid strong. And then the coach can convert that to whatever they need to convert it
The
to.
skill.
The
Yeah.
skill. Because I'm not a skill artist of soccer. I'm not a skill artist of football.
Yeah.
But I'll get you stupid strong. Then that can be molded later on.
Yeah.
So
The
that's cool.
the sport, like the thing in like world of strength conditioning too is like the sport is the sport specific conditioning,
Right.
right?
Right.
Like the things I think people go wrong in the gym by just trying to make athletes do things that look like the sport, and you wind up just looking stupid, right? But it's like the general physical preparedness to take on the demands of sport. That's what's built in the weight room. It's like almost as far removed as you can get from the actual look of the sport.
Absolutely.
But like the swimmer needs leg strength for the dive, right?
Yeah.
They also need that endurance and whatnot, but they also need that power in their arms and the lats in the back and everything to do their strong pulls, right? So their I don't know, their power output per pull is higher because they're just naturally, or they've developed this strength, right? And then, you can develop the other physical attributes and qualities through sport and through other exercise parameters and periodization, all that jazz. But I think people get too far into the weeds of trying to make everything look like the sport.
Well, do you think that's become a bit of it was one of those, it's like functional. It was a
Yeah.
buzzword. Because if it's sport specific, you could market that.
Yes.
Mhm.
And then people would come from all over the place because it's a sport specific area of town or whatever. I just got lost in it all.
Yep.
Like doing the ladder in my gym.
Mhm.
I don't know how that converts to running the football on the field.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I
But
agree.
I'll get a stronger leg to get you a better 40.
Yep.
Or if they come up against Luke on the soccer field, somebody's going down, it won't be Luke.
Yeah.
So
Makes you more resilient too, right?
Oh.
You develop all these other physical qualities that you maybe just be lacking in the usual sport that you do.
Yep.
But then every now and then you're put in a position where you have to rely upon it. Like there's something to be said about, the strength that, or whatever, just that additional bit that you need. Or maybe it's like you're not even on the soccer field and you're just in life and something happens, but you just had that extra reserve to call upon. And then maybe instead of getting injured, you're just dealing with like a career-ending injury. It's like a minor sprain or
right.
Mhm.
strain or something, right? Because you have that reserve.
Well, even understand the pain that's associated with that.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's some people that don't have a history or an experience level of pain related activities.
Yeah.
And then when something does come along, it's like panic
Yeah.
as opposed
Catastrophe.
Right. But they haven't worked through something. I've had a couple of patients like that, and I get to the point of, have you not had a pimple?
Yeah.
Oh, no. Oh, I'm going to fail at this because everything I do puts people through a degree of pain in order
Yeah.
to get the adaptation of that tissue.
Yep.
So, yeah.
It's like,
So-
that's another good thing that's built into resistance training inherently is like learning how to work in and around pain and injury
Yeah.
because it's inevitable in life. Like it's going to happen to you
Yeah.
at some point, right?
Yeah.
And even if it is just like something like, chronic back pain or whatever, like it's whether it's a strain, sprain or whatever, or something more chronic, it's like you're going to have to approach it eventually.
Oh,
It's
absolutely.
going to happen to you. You know
Welcome
what I
to
mean?
life.
So yeah, it's part of life.
Yeah.
It's a signal in the body to me, no different than hunger.
Yeah.
It's just another one of those signals you're gonna experience.
Yeah.
Right?
It doesn't have to be as crazy as David Goggins, but you have to be in the fight.
Yeah, and it's like
like
just
a-
because you feel you're hurting, just doesn't
Yeah.
mean you can't do something. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? It's like
Yeah.
I'm working with a young guy right now in Regina, and he's reporting some like back pain that's come up or whatever, and it's all new because he's just finishing up high school, so he's never really experienced like this kind of thing before.
Yeah.
And is a little bit of catastrophe at the start, like that kind of low mood, like I don't know, like what the fuck's wrong with me? I just had another injury. Like what the hell's going on? Is it related to the other injury? Oh my
Yeah.
god, what is happening? You know what I mean? And it's like, okay, well, we don't know if the back pain is related to the hamstring injury that happened a while ago.
Yeah.
Could be, sure, maybe, right? It's a really complex thing. You talk about the whole pain thing a little bit
Right.
complicated.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean you need to stop squatting entirely. I was like, well, you said ass to grass hurts. Sure. I was like, did you try cutting depth? I was like, did you try, what about pin squats? What does that feel like? And then he's like, the deadlift off the floor, when I'm wedging it, like it's really sensitive. I'm like, okay. I was like, what about a Romanian deadlift? And like, oh, it's only hurting near the bottom. I was like, could you do a rack pull or a Romanian deadlift above that really sensitive position? And like, I'm not going to avoid pain with him forever, right? But like instantly he's like, you know, I'm gonna try and book in. Oh no, my physio's booked up. Like I don't know what to do. And I was like, okay, we don't have, like, based on everything we're seeing here, we don't have to run to physio. Like nothing that says to me is like this is an imminent danger. It never hurts to go to physio. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to put Blaine out of business here or my future self out of business, but we have tools here we can learn through this experience. I was like, I know the program says this. I know. I wrote it down. I know. Try something else. And I'm not going to be mad at you. And in fact, I'm going to be really happy because you're going to make my job so much easier instead of me going, I don't know, he's not going to check in all week. I guess I'll put this in there and we'll see what it felt like at the end of the week. And we're going to do this for 3 months. By the time I figure out something that is working for him. But in the moment, we can work around this. You know what I mean? Like we don't have to entirely stop, right?
Yeah.
So it's just like, that's built into it, right? And if you're willing to go along for the ride, like you can figure this stuff out, right? Because it's inevitable, right? Yeah. So, and you can't put that on a spreadsheet, like being able to work this skill to work around and through an injury, right?
Yeah.
There's different tools you can rely upon. I mean, that's where I think where physio and coaching like really comes in. It's, you know, people don't come to us or you because things are going really well most of the time, right? Usually people that come to coaches, I think, are on one of the two ends of the spectrum. They're not responding to the middle that most people do, right? They're on one end or the other, right? It's like, oh, I tried that, 8 to 12 reps. I'm not getting bigger, man. I don't know what the hell is going on, right? It's like, oh, have you tried more? Have you tried less, right? And it's like, there's these other ends of things that I think there's a bias in the world of physio and coaching that people come to us because whatever they tried before wasn't working. You know what I mean? I think that is the kind of people that come along. And that's why like being that guide can be so beneficial sometimes. So again, I'm not saying like don't go see physiotherapy and stuff. It's good to get advice every now and then, but at the same time, if you have some skills and like play around with it a little bit too at the same time, right? Obviously there's certain things where it's just like, no, you should stop. Like, yeah, I heard a pop in my pec and now it's black and blue. It's like, yeah, maybe stop benching for today, or in a little while actually. But it's more complicated than do or don't. We're not on off switches. Nothing really ever is, but yeah.
Well, I think another spin-off of that is prevention. Because I don't think physio and coaches are used enough for prevention. Prevent what could be coming in the future. And that's part of the training and part of the biomechanics that we do at Mackie too, is that, you did really well getting through this disc herniation, but we know that the organization of that tissue now is forever changed. So therefore, it's going to change the biomechanics. So we got to keep those biomechanics working optimally for you as you move forward so that you can continue to train. You can, instead of having something just a little bit off, but you don't feel it, maybe the nervous system's not picking it up, but it could create a problem down the road. So prevention. And I don't think we've been used enough for that. And I love prevention. It's like check everything over, make sure everything's going. The oil in the car, the spark plugs, that old story is that you can check it and make sure everything's going well for the trip to Vancouver.
Yep. You build the capacity.
Right, because I don't know in school, Thomas, if they teach you much about prevention. It's more about here's the pathology, here's the treatment, now discharged.
Most of the time, that's usually where like it's kind of involved. And of course, like I think prevention too, one, like difficult to bill insurance sometimes. And I know some provide, like in BC, there's a whole thing right now where you can't even like do personal training-esque type things with clients anymore. Like insurance company, like they won't cover it. Yeah. There's like they've changed their billing on it and stuff. It's kind of messed up, but so it's like that I think adds an additional obstacle to like the care that people get. And then it's also like, how do you prove that you prevented something? Because I think it's very hard to sell people on preventative measures. I mean, like even like you look at like the government, it's all reactive. It's never proactive.
For sure. Yeah.
And then there's always the debate of like, how much can you really prevent? And some people actually now I think use injury prevention as a buzzword marketing term. So I actually like to like kind of use like mitigation. You know what I mean? Like shit still happens. Like you may have the strongest bicep in the world and you may be able to barbell bicep curl 315, but you could still tear your bicep, right? Because it's too much, too soon, too fast. It's whatever combination of those things happen to you. You know what I mean? So maybe it's not in the gym, maybe it's in the world or whatever it happens. But at the end of the day, you know, it's like, okay, you didn't prevent it, but like maybe it would have been a full tear instead of like a grade 1 little partial guy or whatever, because that tissue's built up all that tolerance and that capacity that you mitigate maybe like from it happening in the first place. Maybe would have been more tears. Who's to say, right? It's hard to measure that or find that out. And you obviously can't intentionally hurt people in research, right? Because that's a little ethically frowned upon, I think. But I think people do find that those that participate in strength conditioning programs tend to get injured less per like whatever hours of sport played. Right?
Yeah.
So I think there is something there. And it's like, I think we can mitigate. I don't know how much we can truly prevent and stuff, but people I think do sell like preventative programs and everything. And I think people create problems where problems don't exist as well. Right? It's like, oh, like you can't sit with your shoulders anteriorly hunched because that's going to cause a shoulder impingement in 2 years from now. And then you're going to need some sort of surgery. And it's like, yeah, but they don't have any symptoms right now. How do you know for sure that's going to happen? Like, you know what? Maybe they're just sad today. Maybe that's why their posture's a little hunched over. Do you ever think about that? You know? So it's more complicated, I think, than just this equals this all the time, right?
Yeah, when prevention comes from us, it's usually because somebody's come off a fairly major issue, like a spinal disc pathology.
Yeah.
And then after that, they don't ever want to go through that again.
Yeah.
So they want to make sure things are moving the way they should be and going from there. So that's kind of cool.
Building up the tolerance and even like re-exposing yourself to maybe once painful patterns with a disc herniation or even like acute back pain and things like that. You got like a strain in your back or something or anywhere else in your body really. But like you can move through the world with your back stiff as a board for a period of time. But eventually you can't do that anymore.
Correct.
Like it's not a functional way to move.
Correct.
Like you tell me you're going to pick up a pencil off the ground with a perfectly straight back all the time. That's an unnecessary amount of protection. And like the amount of fear surrounding that, you know, it's like eventually you should be okay with putting on your socks with your back flexed because it's hard not to do that.
That's right.
So you have to get to the point where that load on your back, I think, that's okay. And it's well within your capabilities to do so. And, you know, maybe at the time of the acute back pain, that's not where you're at, but you should get back there, right?
Given that they have much patience to get through the time frame that it takes to get that capacity, that brings us back to the beginning.
Buy-in and
communication and just time.
Yeah.
And everybody has a different timeline. Whether they desire that timeline to be shorter or their body just can't adapt that quickly. Because everybody adapts at different speeds as you go through.
Yeah, it's very true. It's like, like in school, for example, like they talked a lot about like prognosis and stuff. How long is this going to take? And it's like, man, like any one of these things could be like a variety of factors. You know what I mean? It's like, well, yeah, sure. Maybe the tissue heals in 6 weeks or whatever. But does that mean you can go back to what you're doing before the tissue was injured? It's probably not because you probably detrained that tissue a little bit, right? And it's like, more.
Do they still give you the stages of tissue healing? Like that first acute stage is 7 sort of days?
They still do that, yeah.
Which is really interesting to me because that's in the event that no other stress has come to that tissue to perpetuate the inflammation. Like you could have reached wrong on the 6th day and you started the inflammatory response all over again. So you have to be careful on those timeframes. So I actually lengthen those timeframes to give them a bit of a fighting chance. And I guess just a recognition that, okay, maybe this will take 3 weeks to get the inflammation under control as opposed to 7 days in the textbook.
And it's not linear, right? Like rehab and stuff, like having gone through injuries ourselves, like it's the whole thing we talked about with riding the wave. It's going to come down and it's going to go up and it's going to go down. It's going to go up. But generally speaking, you should be trending upward.
Right. So over
like,
time,
you like week to week, month to month, like you will experience a change.
Yep.
But how long it's going to take is highly individual, right? But like you're going to see a difference. And, you know, especially like at the end of the day, most injuries do tend to take care of themselves on that aspect of taking care of themselves. But to take care of that person now is you want to build that back up, I think, right?
Absolutely.
Instead of just setting them back out there and being like, hopefully it works out for you.
That's exactly right.
It's not a great way to go about it if you just, send them off.
So that's aches, pains, and gains.
Yeah. That was a roundabout way to get there.
Hey, we took the scenic route. That's all that matters. It's good.
And I probably won't compete again.
That's fair.
Without the
That's fair.
So you're almost 60, right?
Yeah.
And there's this thing that every lifter contends with that, it goes through your mind is like one day you're going to hit your last PR, right? It happens to all of us. We don't know when it's going to be. The literature doesn't really exist on when it's going to be because a lot of people don't train very far into their, aging years and things like that.
Yeah.
So,
and some people only start when they're like 70.
Yeah. So like staring down this beast of like, when's that last PR? I'm not competing anymore. I'm not going for the records necessarily. You're still pushing numbers because you like that stuff and you care about it. But like, why do you still lift? When inevitably you won't be the same as you were and you don't have that competition drive anymore. Why still show up to the gym and move weight around?
Have you listened to the whole podcast?
I mean, I have.
I don't mean that derogatorily, but that's what drives me.
Yeah,
that's what it is.
There is no stop. You hook a Clydesdale up to a wagon, it just pulls.
Yeah.
That's what I do. PRs are interesting though, because is it a PR of all time life or is it a PR for each age?
Yeah.
So I look
after
at
a certain situation or something. Yeah.
Right. I kind of want to be that guy that somebody looks at me and says, yeah, he's 80, but he's still squatting 470.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's a big part of it.
It's a different mindset than
I was going to say the
time.
mindset of like, oh, this is still a PR based off my current age and current situation. Like,
and I have a disability.
Yeah,
Danny.
that's right.
Yeah.
Oh, I know. I've
use
heard all
that.
about it. I've heard all about it. Just like the positive benefits of that mindset, I think is huge.
I think the other thing too is that Darcy, and again, it's my world. Darcy owns my soul. I don't want to leave.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I'm going to do everything I can to survive as I'm going forward.
Yeah, for sure.
If I die, hopefully it'll be, I don't know, driving my truck and racing at SIR and I blow up when I'm 95.
Or under a 700-pound squat.
Under the barbell.
Under the barbell.
I joke to Amanda when I'm like 90 and I'm squatting like 405.
Yeah.
And I'm not coming back up.
Just leave
Just leave me.
Just leave.
That's how I want to go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think
2.5.
I think that
Yeah.
I think that stuff kind of drives me. I think that's a big thing. And I just you know what, I had that big injury and that could have been the end of it.
Mm-hmm.
It was very, very close. And so I'm thinking, I'm going to enjoy every second of every minute of every day.
Some divine intervention has led you to this moment.
Yeah. So I think that's a big factor. I just really believe too, I don't like weak.
Yeah.
I just think that's a cop out.
Oh yeah.
Just like you can get stronger, you can get smarter, you can learn, not smarter, you can learn more.
Yeah.
So that's always a drive for me. I think insecurities too is I came from a time when maybe I wasn't seen to be that good of a kind of student or whatever, and I want to prove that wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
so
I like that.
Just that old adage, right? If you told me I can't,
I will.
let's go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's go.
I feel the same way. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's a big part of it, and I think it's and we've heard this term too, and I like the term. It's a pharmaceutical for me to lift, so it's my drug.
Yeah.
So I go from there. There's a reason I lift too, because if I don't, then my pain gets worse.
Yeah.
My chronic pain. So that's a pretty good driving factor.
You have a lot of reasons why you lift tied to things that are like so much greater than numbers, right?
100%.
Which is something, I mean, like a lot of 20-year-olds, like we have trouble like communicating this thing to people.
Yeah.
We have this joke about the 1-year powerlifting graveyard.
Yeah.
Someone comes in, they get those nice linear progressive gains because it's the first time they actually did a semi-intelligent program in their life.
Yeah.
They compete, they do quite well. They get injured, they regress, they're gone. Right. And maybe they don't lift anymore after that. Right. They
Interesting.
The whole relationship.
Disappear.
Yeah. The whole relationship and identity is tied in the number, not the process that got you there in the first place.
Oh,
right.
really? Interesting.
Yeah.
So it does happen. And like I've struggled to bridge this gap with athletes. Danny struggled to bridge this gap with athletes. It's very difficult to communicate to an 18, 19, 20-year-old, 21-year-old that like, listen, man, this is an investment for the rest of your life.
Yeah,
I know
100%.
we care about these numbers right now, and I care about my numbers too. Don't get me wrong. Like it's still a part of it. But for me, it's a lot deeper than like, I want to get off the toilet by myself when I'm 90. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Like that's what really it comes down to. And like, I got a fiance now, so I have like someone depending on me. I plan on having kids someday. Like I'm going to have other people depending on me.
Yep.
Maybe I need to be the person helping my parents out here. You know what I mean? As when they get older too.
Yeah.
And like, I would love to just have the strength to be able to do what I want to do kind of when I want to do that for as long as possible.
Mhm.
Exactly.
'Cause what's the point in living longer if you can't use those years?
That's right. So it's a similar thread all the way around.
It is.
Different backgrounds, but similar thread going forward.
It is.
Yeah, that's cool.
It's hard to communicate that with people though. Like how do you, like we did an episode called Finding Your Why.
Yeah.
And we talked about our whys and like, you know, why we keep doing it and things like that.
Yeah.
And again, like I'd rather be strong and in pain than in pain and be weak, right?
I would say too, is I'm not that deep that I'm a little bit more superficial in some of it, is that if I'm 60 and I'm squatting over 500, I want to come up against the 25 or 30-year-old squatting 400.
Yeah.
Come on, dude.
What are you doing?
Let's go.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's the ego side of me.
Yeah.
As I walk in, I'm not gonna falsify that. That's just the reality.
Yeah.
Yep.
I have no problems, and I love if I can outlift Luke on something.
Yeah.
Or some of my training partners, same idea.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Let's go.
Yeah.
Let's see where we go. Because I got a couple that are definitely stronger than me, and so it makes me work. So that's always a good pull. And when I win, I let everybody know it.
Yeah. It's healthy competition.
Well,
Exactly.
rivalries, man, they're like a healthy rivalry.
Absolutely.
They are
Yeah.
almost necessary to get the best out of you.
And Danny, when I lose,
Yeah.
I have a disability.
That's right.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Like I can win, but I can't lose.
that's
Yeah.
right. That's right. I always win.
Yeah.
I like it.
It's good.
Well, I think like
Tommy,
what?
have your aches, pains, and
Oh,
gains
we're gonna
been
talk
going?
about ours
Wow,
too?
we can go around the table.
I mean, who
Yes.
cares? Who
We just
cares
spent the
about
last
us, man?
fucking
I'm just kidding.
50 minutes on Blaine. No.
Yeah, no, you're right. My aches, pains, and gains actually have been pretty good lately. Every time I go back to physio school and I'm sitting down again, I get back pain, comes and goes. It's just kind of one of the things I've learned to be able to self-manage now that it's happened a few times. And no matter what, it just happens. So like I try and do things to help, like take more frequent breaks during class and like get up and go to the bathroom and drink more water. So I have to pee more frequently. So I go and get up and just move, because sitting down after being on placement and stuff, and in the hospital, I was getting like 15,000 steps a day. Like it was like like going from all that and then moving around at Mackie, and my back pain came back almost as soon as class started. And like you're sitting more, and the stress levels go up, and your sleep probably suffers, and it's multifactorial. But I try and take the factors that I can control and focus on those ones. And then I think it makes everything better and also gives me some semblance of control over it. But at the same time, I'm also making really good gains on my lifts right now. I went through this process of like forgetting how to deadlift, but still maintaining my strength somehow. And I narrowed my stance up quite a bit because of a bit of an adductor injury I had, because I fell off my bike in last year or so.
It's quite a hilarious story. But.
Yeah, I essentially, like when I fell, like I was going over my handlebars, but the bike was sideways, and I clipped my inner thigh on the handlebar going fairly fast.
Oh, nice.
And I was at the end of it, like my whole thigh actually turned black and blue.
Oh.
And I showed my musculoskeletal teacher, and I was like, look at this injury. She's like, did you get that ultrasounded? And I was like, no, why? She's like, you almost definitely tore your adductor. She's like, look at the bruising. I was like, well, to be fair, we hadn't covered that section yet of the thing of class. Yeah, I thought it was just really bruised. I had a significant trauma. I kept deadlifting through it because I didn't know any better, and I actually competed at provincials on it, and almost hit an all-time PR in the moment. It's hard to hit all-time PRs on deadlift sometimes after a full meet day, just because you've pushed squat and you've pushed bench, and it's a long day, just because that fatigue sets in, right? And then because of the adductor injury, like in the sensitivity there within, I narrowed the stance up. I almost wound up in an Ed Cohn type, like kind of like a frog
stance.
frog
kind of thing.
sumo
Pseudo
stance.
sumo.
Yeah.
Sumoventional, as the commentators on the live stream called it. Sumoventional.
Sumoventional. That's funny.
Yeah, it was Chris Arnold and Carolyn that they called it sumoventional. And I started having this issue of my hands getting caught, particularly my overhand in the deadlift grip kept getting peeled open. I kept dropping lifts on grip, but I wasn't losing grip. I was getting opened up. Like it was not my strength, because I've held on to over 600 pounds before. Like, why the hell am I dropping things all of a sudden if I'm not, I don't have like some neurological issue? You know what I mean? My grip strength didn't just disappear on me. And then one day I was like kind of standing over the barbell, playing with where my hands were, like in relation to my thighs. And I actually widened my stance back out, and like pretty significantly. and all of a sudden it was gone. Like my thighs were no longer in the way. So I think maybe some combination of like changing my grip and stance over time, and maybe my hands got a bit fatter because I'm a little bigger, and my thighs got a little bit bigger because of training and eating and stuff, and muscle mass and everything. I think that maybe actually manipulated my mechanics a little bit to the point where this was happening.
Interesting.
And now like it's really starting to fly and click, right? Because I can adapt to this slightly different variation of sumo, and it's actually going quite well. And I actually changed my stance in the squat as well.
Yeah.
To quite wide again, which is where I kind of started, honestly. It's come full circle for me. And maybe it's because I have really strong adductors, and I avoided the wide stance because of, I think, the adductor injury as well.
But
And
still trained it essentially.
Still trained it because it's not like it's not working. It's not just asleep when I'm doing sumo deadlifts and squats and all the other variations and accessories and stuff. So it's been an interesting experience, and that's why I really encourage athletes and lifters to experiment with your technique, right? And if you have a hunch, chase it down, give it some time, see if it works or not. And even if it doesn't work, you still have more information than you did before.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
You can use that.
So if you had to project into the future, what would be some of your goals for all time? Like this lifetime I want to create and hit. And I'll ask Danny you the same question of all time.
I think
in a lifetime.
For squat, I haven't squatted 600 yet, but I think it's feasible. So I think all time I got to give myself a bit more than that. You know what I mean? Yeah. So maybe even like in the 600s, like low 600s, mid 600s.
Nice.
I would love to get to. I'm not even in my 30s yet, and like that's kind of where male strength athletes peak is in their 30s. Like the ones that have been training for a while, especially you see it in like the power sports as well.
I'm still peaking.
Yeah, well, I mean, exactly.
My God, don't stop at 30.
When does it actually end? But yeah, so like, I mean, I haven't even, then on top of, after the 30s, there's the old man strength. So who knows how far I can take it.
There's a lot of evidence that goes against that narrative.
Yeah.
So you peak when you're like around 35, I think is what it is.
The male Olympians tend to is what I'm saying, right? Yeah. I mean, like it's a whole different thing. Power and speed do tend to drop off like first in terms of like aging, but like
true that type 2's gone first.
Yeah, but like strength is one of the things that sticks around the longest. Only second, I think, to maybe endurance. I could be misquoting that, but makes sense, doesn't it? Right? Like just the way humans operate in the world and that kind of thing, like what we have to do day to day and everything. And I think with training, you can actually maintain, if not gain, even further, right? Like you can keep going because you got that strong base. It's totally different than most people, I think, that wind up in research. And then bench press, man, I don't care. I just want to hit 405 one day.
Yeah.
Just one time, one rep. Even if I touch and go it, honestly, I want to put that on the bar, touch my chest and bring it back up, right? I think just that one time, it would be awesome. Because, bench is a bitch of a lift to try and get to move. It's just so technically picky. 1 inch, half inch too low on your stomach, too high, you're not getting it. It's over. You don't get the chance. You know what I mean? So it's very unforgiving. So I'd love to get to that point at some point in time. And then deadlift, I gotta get into the 700s. I think just once, at least. So I don't even know if that'll be lifetime goals, but like. At some point, I would like to get there. And
love it.
I'm in no rush. I don't train with this like never unrelenting fervor because life experiences throw things at you and strength waxes and wanes. And, the start of physio school, like my strength took a dip. My nutrition took a dip. Like there's just so many variables changing in my life all of a sudden, all at once. My fiance had to move away for her educational placement. And so like I had all these changes to my life and I was like, oh my God, this is a lot to navigate and manage. But, like I did a presentation on this at Mackie, but you don't need a lot of training to make progress. It may just be slower, and you certainly need a lot less than that to maintain, and it's not much.
Well, if you look at my training, mine's twice a week.
Yeah,
that's it.
Really?
So squats on Saturday, bench dead on Sunday. During the week, I might get some extra assistance in, and that's it. But what I found is just with my age, that nervous system recovery. Huge, absolutely critical.
Yeah.
I think if the older you get, the step into overreaching and overtraining is that much easier. because you don't know your recovery rate.
Yeah.
So mine was based on the fact that I worked too much during the week.
Yeah.
So it was pretty hard to get after a 13-hour day and then try and go train after that for some heavy lifts is too hard.
For sure.
So that was what worked up. Well, thanks. That's good for sharing the numbers.
That's kind of my aches, pains, and gains. Otherwise, like body's been feeling pretty good. I will say, by the way, I've been doing a lot of cardio. I've been biking to school and everything.
Good.
And I did lots of sets of 10 before going into this current strength block. And I need to rest about tops 1.5 to 2 minutes between squat sets right now.
Oh, wow.
And damn,
you feel
is it
conditioned.
ever a good feeling.
Wow.
I can just get my workouts done like quicker. And I don't feel like shit when I have to, like do something that's a little more cardiovascular intensive. So I can actually tolerate more volume and my workouts get done a lot quicker, which makes going to the gym a lot more feasible for me as well. So cardio does not actually kill your gains. So also you have a healthy heart, you live longer, you can make more gains.
It's all real.
Right?
It's all real.
It's all tied together, eh?
Danny.
Yeah.
Aches, pains, and gains. Hit me. What do you got?
Well, this past, I'd say like 5 weeks. I didn't shift focus as much as I did last year.
What did you do again?
Yeah.
Tell the good people.
So I'm currently in the Saskatoon Fire Department recruitment process, and they have a fitness test. They have a fitness test with that.
Yep.
And last year, what episode? Because we recorded it.
This is just about our 1 year anniversary because we took a 1 month break during the year, and now this is episode 10. So about a month from now, we'll be at like our 1 year anniversary. That's when we started.
Okay, and I said this in the first episode?
Well,
or second?
around then, yeah.
Either way,
happy anniversary.
Yeah, thank you.
Close. Yeah.
Yeah. So this fitness test, going into it this year, obviously it was a lot less stressed because I knew what to expect. And so basically, like the only difficult part is the VO2. They test your VO2, and they don't tell you. There's no specific time you have to pass. You just have to go until you can't. And even if you say train for it and you go till failure, there's still a small chance you didn't get a good enough score, and they could pass. They could fail you.
Okay.
So regardless of your effort, you could still fail, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so like the last year when I did it, I was like, oh my God, like that's kind of stressful because like being a powerlifter, I don't run, right? And so then last year I had to shift everything. I dropped all weights. I just ran. Like I was running like for 3 weeks, twice a day, like hard. And
so just like an 800% increase in overall volume is something.
Oh yeah, I would never recommend doing anything like this to other coaches or athletes. But I had no idea what else to do other than I just got to work, and we're just gonna do what it takes to get it done. And like. I was like 3 days before last year, my ankle started like giving me problems, and I was like stressed texting Adrian. I was like, "Yo, can you get me in?" And we looked at it, and he was like, "I don't know, like
duct tape and Advil."
Yeah.
And so like the morning of, I just like overdosed on Tylenol, and I was like, "Well, let's go." And sure enough, I passed last year, no problem. So with all this in mind, this year, I started training a little bit further out. I kept weight training. I was only running like, I think it was like every second day or every third day. So I would like run, rest, run, rest, run up until the test. And I did better this year.
Okay.
So
yeah.
Imagine applying basic training principles.
Crazy, hey?
To running.
Crazy.
As well as lifting.
Yeah, I know. So
let me just increase your squat volume by 800%.
Yes.
On a given week. And let's just hope you don't get knee pain or back pain or get like a catastrophic injury. Yeah.
I don't know. So,
I know how to work.
Yeah. That was my mindset last year.
Yeah.
And this year, the weight training, during this like whole running process, it almost felt like I was just like going through the motions because I wasn't really focused on like, okay, I got to keep putting weight on and like show up to the gym and put a lot more effort into the weights. It was the other way around. I would hit the weights and then I would turn it on for the treadmill because I would basically emulate the test itself. And I would like
sport specific.
Exactly. Yeah.
Specificity. At least you had that one.
Yeah. Exactly. So yeah, like training wise now, now that we're shifting kind of gears back to just like regular weight training, I'm still gonna do a session for conditioning like once a week, I think.
Because there's a part of you that liked how you felt when you were in good shape like that.
Yep.
Yeah.
It was not bad. Yeah. And yeah, like it didn't take up too much time. Like, it's not too bad. So it feels like it felt like I was just going through the motions now for training, but now that we're shifting gears, I kind of got that motivation back. And so like this week I'm kind of fired up to hit my squat singles and benches and all that. But yeah, for the aches, my pec and my shoulder have been giving me a lot of problems for bench press.
Have you tried not being a bitch?
Well, that's crazy.
That's my treatment approach, Blaine.
Okay, I like that.
So I went to Adrian, and there's a quote he said that I got from this whole conversation, from your philosophy on all that. So I'm on my back on the bench, and he's doing a pec release on my right pec, and he is fucking digging in hard. Like I'm covering my mouth. I'm like, holy fuck! Like, I'm in there squealing, and he says, "Well, this isn't a spa," and I was like, "Man, that is so true." He's like, "I'm not there to feel like I'm there to feel good, like to get better,
Feel good later."
To feel, yeah, and like I'm willing to do whatever I said. Do what you got to do to help me get better. And he's just absolutely tearing the pec off the bone. It feels like, and yeah, he goes, "Well, it's not a spa. I'm not here to make you feel good. Like we're here to do what needs to be done." And I was like, man, that couldn't be any more true. Anyway, so the bench was causing me like shoulder discomfort and pec discomfort. Went to Adrian. What is the muscle? Teres major or minor?
Both of them exist.
Both? Yeah. Well, one of the other, I can't remember which one, but I was having trouble hitting it with a lacrosse ball with my arm going up over. So then he said, like, try it across. And I was able to, like, mash the hell out of it going across this way. And that coupled with, like, this band row has taken the pressure or something off of the pec. I don't know, but like I can bench now pain free. And that has been a huge like positive impact on my outlook, I think. So
did you have weakness with your bench then, or was it just pain?
It was just pain.
Yeah. The referral pattern for teres major is there.
Yeah. Really?
Yeah.
Okay. Cause I like when I would unrack, it'd be good. As soon as I come down and like get near the chest, the pec right near the armpit or right near the right near the armpit would start to like, it would just be like, it would feel tight or something. I don't know. But then like my shoulder girdle would burn and it would just feel weak after that. And I just couldn't do it. So then we switched to like a pin press up above it, and that was okay. But now that we kind of got a plan of attack, I do this before bench and it works. It's really good.
Excellent.
Yeah. So kudos to Adrian. What else?
Then Blaine asked you what your lifetime goals are.
Oh, my
lifetime.
Lifetime? I've always right now, like I think I'm coming up, like I feel confident with this interview or this
That's good.
recruiting process.
Yeah.
So I think after I get done chasing the career, that's when life can begin to settle. And I mean, there'll be other events that come up, but I'll be able to put more of a focus back onto training, I think. And like I see like at Westerns, all like the top dogs, like the top 83s, like Jansen, he's benching like, what did he hit? Well, in the gym, regardless.
Yeah.
Regardless, he's in the gym hitting like 460. And he, like same weight class, same size. We're identical. And I'm just like, fuck, man, how are you doing this? But in the back of my head, I'm like, well, if he can do it, why couldn't I? And so I think now that with life eventually going to settle in, I can't see myself not hitting something like that. So the goals, I think in the near future, in the near future, a 700 squat for sure. Because I'm like, what, 650 right now? 651 is my best.
Amazing.
We're not far off.
Yeah.
And 700 is fairly close.
Yeah.
So I see that coming to fruition. A 450 bench I would love, like 455, the four plates and then a 25, huge. And then a 700 plus deadlift, like, because I think I'll never have a better deadlift than my squat. I don't think.
I don't think so either. Yeah.
No, so my leverages don't add up, and but a 700 plus deadlift for sure.
It's very interesting because that was always a debate back in the years where when we were debating on communication loops about deadlifts and squats and how the deadlift should always outdo the squat, and mine never has.
Yep.
And it's just, I don't know, leverages are changed. It's just not.
Yeah.
Almost like people are individuals.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
I just find I can load up my legs a lot more efficiently, and it's a lot more effective than I can't do that efficiently with deadlift.
Yeah.
There's a bit of that survivorship bias too, I think, built into it. Like when you're really good at something, like you just put more effort and time and thought into it.
Oh.
And that's,
you know, and the belief in it too.
Yeah. Well, do you guys ever find in your lifting careers that there's a shift in the cosmos where 1 month to the deadlift is absolutely my best lift ever. I love it.
Yep.
And then it goes to shit,
All
and
the
then it
time.
switches over to the squat, and then back to the bench. And,
Yeah. So I will I say this to my athletes all the time. You literally can only pick 2 lifts out of the 3 that'll be good at one time.
Yeah.
Unless you're like a brand new beginner, everything might feel good until you get to a point like right now, it's only my bench that's kind of coming back. My squats feel foreign. My deadlift, I can't get into a good position. It just feels like shit, but I'm still doing it. But I think that's always going to like ebb and flow.
Yeah.
Just ride the wave, baby. Right.
And that's why we just got to ride the wave. You just got to
You
go
stick
with
around long enough. You stay in the water long enough. The next wave's coming.
So are you guys now still doing put a lot of weight into RPE, that sort of? Yeah.
I think RPE.
For most of my athletes.
I think RPE is like, I don't want to say it's like the future because it's already here, but like I think the type of training approach that allows, that auto regulates the athlete and not necessarily like how you're feeling, but like it puts
it allows for like variations in performance.
Yes, it's not a fixed, rigid structure. I think people are moving away from that. But again, it's a particular type of athlete that'll
excel with it.
Yeah. So, but your RPE is it more still on an auto-regulation basis? Like if my RPE goes in on that day and I do my 500 and it was like a 6.
Yeah.
Well, okay, I'm going to move up I want to get into that 8 and 9 area on that day.
Mm-hmm.
Is that still how you guys are?
Oh yeah. So how I'll do it is I'll give, I have enough like data on most of my lifters I can give them an exact load and then have the target RPE, and it should be fairly close.
Okay.
But I say like if you hit, say it's 500 at 7 RPE for a single, and they hit 500 and it's like a 6, I'll be like, it's up to you whether or not you can go up and hit a true 7. But for next week, we'll probably I'll give you 510 at 7, and we'll see how that goes.
So it's not much distant from auto regulation then.
No.
I like doing the top sets with back offs.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
So like if you do like a top set of 5 at RPE 8, so leave 2 reps left in the tank.
Yeah.
That usually is going to be pretty like fairly consistent from week to week. Like you're going to find that like, you know, maybe it's a little less one day, but it also, I think it gives people the permission to pull back on days where they don't feel good.
Right.
But it also gives you permission to go for it when you are feeling good. Right.
Yeah. Well, it's very similar then.
Yeah. And then based on that day, like that'll determine the load for your back off. So we'll use like whatever, like it triples at 75% of your estimated 1 rep max from the day calculated from your top set, right?
Yeah.
So that allows you to auto-regulate the amount of like overall tonnage or the chronic workload that you, or the acute workload that you hit that day based on how that top set moves, right? And then, week to week and stuff, I think sometimes lifters, the one issue is like lifters get in their head about like, I have to put more on than last week.
Yeah.
And that's not how that works, because to get strong, like I view it as more of like tending to a garden. You need the right variables in place to make things grow, right? You can't just always focus on like the top end of things and like the peak of things, because if you can move your back end up or the bottom end of your strength up, that means the top end has to follow. It just is going to follow. But it's not always obvious because fatigue masks these things, right? So your day-to-day performance is gonna inherently just move around. So like I try to encourage people to let go of preconceived beliefs and notions. Because I've had really bad days just mentally, psychologically in the world, struggled on an exam, fights with family, whatever, like breakups, going into the gym and actually like having a really good day despite how shitty of a day I had, 3 hours of sleep. And then, I've also had really good days where I'm like, oh, I can't wait to hit this lift. And it goes like shit. And it's like, well, fuck, why do I even bother having...
What am I doing?
Yeah, why do I even bother having these preconceived notions, right? And, you never know what you're going to get on the day. So I always tell people, take what's there. Yeah. And again, like the wave is going to come, right? Like you maintain enough sunlight, water, and the right pH in the soil, and eventually the tomato plants are going to grow, right? It has to happen, right? It's going to happen. So if you can just stick around and keep those variables in place and keep the right exposure in place, and you're not always pushing that top end up, which I think puts you naturally at probably a bit of an acute risk of injury every time you get closer and closer to failure, right? Versus because that, increased fatigue and, maybe not like a full on tear, like acute catastrophic injury, but, overuse injury is pretty common in resistance training. So I think we can, by using auto-regulation and just maintaining consistent exposure, you don't necessarily need to be pushing that load up every single week. And
Correct.
You can almost let it ebb and flow naturally. And now what me and Danny are doing lately is we don't even change things week to week. We leave it the same. We essentially copy and paste over the tab. And then, you change up the program eventually when it stops working, right? Right. Or if you need a deload or, life happens or whatever, things get in the way. But, I used to think like you had to do a deload every fourth or fifth week, right? Or whatever. But now I find like most oftentimes, man, if you're getting lots of gains right now, why would you stop it? Why would you just put the brakes on? Milk that as far as you can.
Exactly.
And then once you start getting that performance drop off and start talking about what's going on, maybe they need more exposure now because they're desensitized to that exposure, and you need more water and sunlight or something, right?
I think it unconsciously takes care of overreaching and overtraining too. It just kind of makes its way through that without investing in it.
Yeah.
So I think that's good.
Yeah. It's a bit of a rant on my end there,
That's
but
good.
yeah, I don't know. We've talked a lot about our philosophy around training, and it's changed a lot over the years and stuff. And but try and like, I don't know. I find like creating 1 week at a time now, like for programming and stuff. Like I'm less stressed about it. It's more like the athlete doesn't feel this pressure, I think, too, to get to a certain place by here, right?
Yep.
Right. And there's a time and a place for it, I think, with peaking and stuff. But like for some athletes now, I don't even use like standard peaking periodization. We'll train almost up to the meet and then take a couple days off, right? And the first time I was exposed to this idea, I thought it was crazy. I thought it was nuts. I was like, there's no way this can work. And then I'm taking a risk with an athlete and their performance, and they care about their numbers and I care about their numbers. But then it works and I'm like, oh man, what do I even know? What is true?
Everything just gets turned upside down.
What is the truth? You know what I mean? Like, but the truth is everyone's different and individual. If you just try and problem solve and stick with the person and watch the waves are going to give you answers, So I don't know. That's kind of like my take on this thing nowadays.
Yeah, it's good.
I think it's more real.
Yeah.
I think it takes into consideration everything else that goes on with that individual because it is so complex.
Yeah.
And just the box programs before the linear progressions.
Yeah.
They can work. Like we can use that in the clinic quite easily because the linear programs is just a little bit each day, a little bit and build that capacity. But when it gets into the levels you guys are at, it's a little bit more tenuous.
There's even there's like research out there, like should we periodize for females around the menstrual cycle, because
Right.
a lot of strength
Mhm.
literature's on just men, right?
Yeah.
College age males usually,
Yep.
and women are usually left out of the equation. So
Yeah.
people are like wondering, like, is this something we've forgotten about because we just didn't do any research on women, right? And like you think about it though, not everyone's going to experience the menstrual cycle the same way and like the symptoms associated with that. And after coaching so many females over the years and whatnot, RPE just takes care of it for you.
Yep.
Oh, you have extreme, like, I mean, sometimes some of them can't even make it to the gym. That's a whole other conversation. But,
Yep.
But if you're like really crampy or you feel really weak because of the phase you're in, just take the RPE. RPE is king. It's gonna take care of you, right? You just stick to that RPE. Don't worry about necessarily what you did last week. Obviously, it's nice when that number ticks up and it's great when it's there. But the answer is it's not always going to be there. Whether or not you're a male without a menstrual cycle, you're a female with a menstrual cycle, right? It's like that RPE just inherently takes care of it, right? Which I think is just another good use case for it, right? You can auto-regulate.
How confident are you in your athletes picking their RPE?
It's a skill, definitely.
Like
That's
how
something
do you
that
know
develops over
Yeah.
time for sure.
Because how do you know his 7 is his 7?
It's a good question. It's so what we do, right, is use a lot of video review.
Yeah.
And that makes the athlete video it, and usually they watch it back, right? And there's actually research on it too, with like how accurate people are with predicting RIR values, reps in reserve. And over time, if your target's like the baseline, you can imagine like a squiggly line going way over, way under, and just ping-ponging back and forth.
Yep.
But over time, that noise gets really close to the actual signal, and they start to really align with each other the more advanced you get. So it's a learned skill, right? Because built within training, you're going to naturally overshoot every now and then because you have no idea how to gauge this, right? And you're going to get close to failure. You might even fail. And now you know what a 10 is, because the rep before was the 10. You went for 11, it doesn't exist. You failed, right?
But that 10 today may not be a 10 next week or next month.
Exactly,
That's
right?
right.
Which
Yeah.
makes it. Do you ever combine it with velocity training?
Well,
It's
you've used
It's
velocity.
a little tedious.
Is it?
Yeah. And I don't know, like it's definitely not something that is necessary to like take your training to the next level.
True that.
Because like there's world champions that have never even, like what is that? You know what I mean?
It's
Totally.
it's a tool.
A tool, yes. And I've found that it can sometimes like produce like false hope almost. Because like when I was using it, there was if I was doing squats, there was always I would have a
baseline weight.
A baseline weight. So I would do like a set of 3 at 205 kilos. And that would continue sometimes to like get faster and faster and faster. So I'm like, oh, okay. So this must be okay. But then sometimes it'd be faster than last week, but then my working sets would just feel like shit.
Oh, interesting.
And I don't know. I didn't know what to extrapolate from it other than like, what the fuck is this? This is just wasting my time. And I don't know.
End of the day, though, let me ask you, right? When you video your squat and you watch back, what are you judging? Velocity.
Speed.
Time.
Yeah,
how
everyone's looking
fast
at
did it
speed.
move? Yeah.
It's a little less objective, sure.
Yeah.
But, everyone moves a weight differently. But over time, you start to see how you move weight.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, based on this, so rep 6 to 7, it got this much slower. This is probably an RPE 8 for me today, right? And then you combine that with your subjective feel.
That's a very good point.
And you get a nice in between. And between our video reviews we do with athletes and stuff, being like, no, you need to work way harder. Like that was too easy for you.
Yep.
You need to jack that up. They get that feedback. They go back in, they video it again, they watch it again, they send it to you. And it's this iterative process where you kind of help refine their ability to judge over time. And they also self-discover it as well. And then it's a really good tool to self-manage any trials and tribulations, I guess, that come along with the world of training, because it's not all hunky-dory and sunshine and rainbows.
Like you said, it is a tool.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of tools out there.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
And then how complicated. And I like the idea too of video, because when I did my 520, I did it 2 reps and I'm going, well, actually it felt pretty good and it moved much better than I thought I felt.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I probably could have done maybe 1 or 2 more to get that 9 if you want to consider that. But so I like that.
And sometimes I watch a video back and I'm like, brother, you got to drink a tall glass of work harder today because that was not hard enough,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Even though I'm like, oh yeah, this is the top set, and I pick the weight up, and I'm like, oh god, this feels heavy.
Yeah.
And then I do it, and I watch the video, and I'm like, oh, that was like RP 5, dude. Like,
Yeah.
So
put some weight.
here's a question for you. If an athlete asks you to rate their RPE on like a set of 5 or something, do you, what do you value more? Would you value like looking at it, watching the velocity, or getting their subjective feedback on how it felt? Like, say on their 5th rep, it was still like it looked like the first, like it was very fast, but they say like it was getting tougher. Like, I don't know if I had a couple more in. What do you value more?
Well, it's the interesting thing is like the feeling when it's new to people.
Yeah.
It like what they've assigned certain RPEs to and the feelings, it changes over time. It
Oh,
morphs.
yeah.
Because I remember someone saying like it was slow.
Yep.
Hence it was hard and the RPE was this.
Yep.
I said, no, you need to slow down because of physics and acceleration. And this is how you move mass. Also, the muscle tissue, like when it wants to generate maximal force, doing it really fast,
Yeah.
you actually can't generate as much force over time as opposed to contracting a little more slowly. It actually like,
It's a gradual contraction.
yeah, it's beneficial to actually not try and slam the muscle fiber together. I'm not going to get into the intricate muscle physiology of all that stuff, but yeah, I remember learning back in kin that sometimes that slower contraction is actually more beneficial to that maximal strength, right? So it's like that's why you can't move as much weight, like going as fast as you can, and you also just stop being able to move as fast as you can because of physics, right? Eventually, you're going to slow down, right? You have to, and so like it moves slow, yes, but that was a 7. I think you could do 3 more right now if I had a gun to your head and I said do it, right?
Yeah.
It's changes over time, and I think that's part of the coaching process too, right? Like sometimes when you work with someone who's never experienced the burn in their muscle before, they'd be like, what the hell is happening to me? There's a story I told on the podcast once. I had a guy that we did Bulgarian split squats for one of the first times ever, and he got a mega quad pump, and he was like, what the hell is that? And he points at his vastus medialis, and I was like, that's your quad, brother. Like that's the bump that was very visible to him there. I was like, that's one of your quadriceps. Yeah. I was like, there you go, man. Like, because you never experienced that burning before. But,
Right.
you know, in that kind of environment, you show like, it's okay. It's safe. This is what it's like. This is what it feels like. And this is what you get out of it over time. And I think it's like, again, this iterative process where people learn, right? I think the same thing applies to technique as well. Over the years, I've found myself like giving less and less technical cues when they're not necessarily warranted, when there's not a problem.
Yep.
Don't get me wrong. I'll give you like the basics, the fundamentals, and everything, but there's something to be said about letting the athlete just discover the movement. And without even correcting things, sometimes I'll just give them constraints. So you're dipping down on one side all the time during your squat. But maybe I won't say it. I'll just give them a pin squat. They start whacking one side before the other side, and they start all of a sudden leveling out that bar in their back. And now all of a sudden they're a lot more stable and they can generate more force, lift more weight or something like that. So you can give people constraints, or their hips shoot up out of the hole in the squat and they're doing a squat morning out of it. But then you give them a pause squat and they have to come out of the hole a little slower now just because of what you did to the constraints or whatever. And it is like a valid way to teach like a motor learning skill is you give task constraints.
For sure.
And people kind of refine this over time, right? And then, you know, sometimes there is a problem and athletes like, I don't know what the hell is happening to my deadlift, man. And I'm like, well, the bar is a kilometer off your shins. Why don't you pull that in a little closer and let's see what happens, right? So it's, you know, it's not an all or nothing answer.
Kilometer.
Yeah, it happens. Yeah, it's out here, you know. But
I've found that I've been giving less and less like technical advice. Is like if give them like the basic if you haven't done it before.
Yeah, when they're
sure.
new or they're learning.
Yeah,
or
obviously
they have questions.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not going to not answer, but like the more advanced you get, whatever that means, the more stronger you get. I think the more in tune you are becoming with your own technique, and the less value I think I'll become less valuable from giving outside advice, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And like if you're continuing to get stronger, if you're continuing to make gains, don't
fix
if
what
it
isn't
ain't
broken.
if it ain't broke, don't fix it, right?
Why create problems where there's not a problem?
Exactly.
necessarily,
Yeah.
too,
I'm not going to just come here and just blow smoke and make myself sound good.
I used to feel like I had to, though, going back to what we talked about earlier.
Exactly. Silence is okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, man, that looked good. Like, I mean, sure, like there's a couple of those reps looked a little but like, what are you really doing to that person's like confidence and their feeling of self-efficacy
Yeah.
if you're always like nitpicking their technique
Yeah.
all the freaking time?
Yeah.
It's like, let them just experiment and move. When someone's running down a field, like playing soccer or whatever, someone's not in their ear constantly giving them cues, right? They take a step this way. That was a little weird. The brain self-corrects, and all of a sudden they develop this like refined motor pattern like over time. And that's what I've noticed kind of makes a big difference. And I think it also applies to RPE. Like these things have a way of working themselves out if you just stick around with it long enough, right? And like, yeah, obviously you're going to need a little more feedback if you're a beginner in RPE and form, right? Because you just don't know what you don't know. But at the same time, you know, you don't need to be the person in their ear all the time. Like that RPE was wrong. That call was wrong. Or like, you know, and then at the same time, you should also praise them. It's like, yeah, man, that looks really good. I'll say like, I have no further comments on that technique, and I'll click to the next video.
Yep.
I'll be like, that looked great. On to the next one. You know, like awesome. Like you crushed it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I like reviewing both the objective where you're just looking at it, seeing how they move, seeing what groove they're in, if you want to call it that.
Yeah.
Because I think the RPE can change any given day depending on their neurophysiology too.
Yeah.
Like how like that RPA of 10 with a 500 squat today, but I crushed 520 later. Well, was that a true 10? Well, on that day it was.
On that day it was, right?
Yeah. Whereas the 520 was not.
Yeah.
Okay. So now that RPE has to change based on whatever given that day.
Yep.
So I think taking in all the different things. And have you guys ever kicked anybody out of the gym because their head was not there? Like you could tell that you're not even thinking about where your hips are.
Yeah.
You're not even thinking about how that bar feels on your back and how tight you are with it. And I don't mean kick them out of the gym, but we just switch training. Like we have to, this is not your day.
Yeah.
And so I got to take you out of this because we're going to fail every which way. Your head, you're thinking, and then you find out, I'm in a divorce with my spouse. Okay, this is a day that we're going to do something different.
Yeah.
Yep. I mean, like, I think online it's a little bit different because you think about it like online coaching, the athletes doing a lot of the minute-to-minute decisions on their own,
Right.
which I think is really valuable. They develop that skill and confidence to do so. And then you have that sounding board in your coach, right? But yeah, when I was doing things in person, like, you do want to have success, right? And sometimes there is the point where you need to just change things up.
Yeah.
We're like, we're not getting anywhere with this. We're beating a dead horse. Like nothing's changing. You know what I mean? Like you can't get anywhere. So it's like, let's mix it up a little bit. Maybe they are going through like some significant life stressor as well, like loss of a loved one or something along those lines, or like, you know, divorce, or like you said. And it's like, yeah, let's just change it up or whatever.
Yeah, because I think on those days too, is if you're not tuned in to what's going on, that's the day you start nitpicking them because their technique is off, and you're saying, well, what are you doing? You got to get, okay, you're not pushing here, you're not doing, and then it's just not a good day.
Yeah,
Snowballs.
they're not in a place.
Snowballs.
Yeah, they're not in a place to learn.
No.
You know what I mean?
No.
Like, so that's the thing too. And honestly, sometimes I have this thing where when athletes check in with me, we have a weekly check-in. You can always email me in between and stuff like that, but we check in once a week. I usually tell people, you know, like, if you miss this day, like you missed the day, that's okay. Like you can still ask me questions, but I can't backtrack every single day of the week because like the day I do them is on the specific day. And sometimes people will give me videos, but will like not check in. I have found that I can do more harm than good without context for the videos, and then just me commenting on the videos and not having any context for how their week went and how they're feeling about it, right? So if I just look at the video and I say this and that, I'm like, man, like, I don't know, your squat's looking a little off here. Maybe we could try this and this and this. But like, I didn't know that they tried like 100 different things, and they're extremely frustrated with their squat.
Yeah.
And they're also having a hard time in school right now, and all these other things are going on. It's like, I can do more harm than good just by even commenting on the videos.
Totally.
So it's a way for almost to keep them accountable and me accountable for this like agreement we have.
Yeah.
But like just throwing things out there to someone without any context sometimes is not the best way to coach somebody. You know what I mean? And like sometimes it's like, I'll sit down with them and be like, all right, let's build a mental health day into your program.
Yeah.
I was like, what exercises do you look at on the program and you go, oh, I can't wait to do those? You know, like, we're gonna put that in here, or we'll mix them into the whole program kind of thing. Because fun is underrated as well.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Because I think you should enjoy the gym
Yep.
most of the time. You don't always want to go, don't get me wrong, we all know that. But most of the time I feel like you should at least feel better leaving than when you did coming in, right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like if it's taking more away from you than it's giving you, I don't think you're doing something right. There's something you need to change, right?
Yeah, because you have to get to the point where when your week is not, like for me, if my week is really struggling, I'm thinking, oh no, I get to train on Saturday.
Mm-hmm.
Something to look forward to.
Yeah, something to look forward to. And we do that with chronic pain too.
Yeah.
'Cause a lot of chronic pain people don't have anything to look forward to.
Yeah.
So if you can create that, and what's better for your stress level, gym wise and everything else, but you got something planned that's super exciting.
Mm-hmm.
All of a sudden, whatever shitstorm's coming down on you, it's not quite as bad.
Just melts away.
Yeah, because you got something to look forward to.
Yeah.
And that's what Saturdays do for me. Yeah.
Yeah.
Till I get under 315 and it feels like 800. Then it just goes bad.
I had a day like that. I had
Just goes
120 kilos on my back, and I was like, Jesus Christ, I'm gonna die. And then I put a little bit more weight on that day, and I was like, yeah, this is all I got today or whatever. I think I topped out at like 170 kilos for like 6 reps or whatever, and I had been doing more than that, but like at the same time, like my knees were hurting, my back was flaring up, all these things, and it's like, like how much good are you gonna do if I drive through this right now?
Yeah.
Now, sometimes there is a time and a place to push through certain things. For example, I got a competition coming up, and the peak is kind of depending on certain dosages and exposures to load. Time and a place for sure.
Yeah.
But like, I don't know, man, being this far out from a competition and things, it's like, what am I going to get out of that?
Yeah.
Right?
Well, I think it comes down to like sometimes you can turn your computer on and it's not working.
Mm-hmm.
But the night before you close it down, it was working fine.
Yep.
On certain days you show up at the gym, the computer's just not firing.
Yep.
So whatever nervous system is not working, that could totally affect you that day.
Yep.
And that's when I tell people, you know what? I think you need to go do some dumbbell bicep curls. Call it a day.
Yep.
Be done.
Just change it up a little bit.
Change it up.
Yeah, there was a few weeks ago. This is when we started integrating like top set singles again, and I hit 265 for squat. Felt like shit. Overshot. I was mad. I was like, "Fuck, this is like, what am I doing?" Like, I was just like, after I was like,
"Why are you so weak?
Why am I here?" Like, not a good headspace. And so the next week, last week, warmed up again, hit 260, less weight than the week before, moved worse. And I'm like, what the fuck am I doing? And then I like, granted, the whole time I was still running, so there was that extra like novel stimulus, I guess. But I think like I had a chat with Kurt, and I was like, I want to remove these top set singles out because we're so far out from competition right now. I don't think it's necessary right now. And I'm just fighting with them. So let's take them out. I was doing really well with like top sets of like 4. So like doing sets of 4 across the board. So we're going to go back to that and hopefully get into a better headspace. And then once, competition comes around, then we can introduce the singles again. But I just don't see the need to like just banging my head against the wall to try and get something to move that.
So if we springboard off of that, here's a question to both of you to think about is when your headspace is bad, do you have a go-to that helps you pivot out of that?
I do. Depends why it's going bad. You know what I mean? Like, so when my back pain got like really severe and like became like pretty debilitating at one point in time, there's like kind of this like it's chronic low back pain, like that's what it was, right? And like when see Adrian and stuff, and like I got the advice that like okay, nothing's broken, nothing's like damaged, there's no like neurological symptoms that we should be concerned about. There's no reason why you can't do what you are doing and things like that, which is super helpful advice. But I need to prove that to myself. You know what I mean? At the same time, right? And that's why resistance training is so great in general. But so going into the gym and things like that, developing like some mantras and stuff I could kind of hang on to, like even like my philosophy of like 1 set's better than 0 sets, knowing that the exposure to maintain or even gain strength, the bar is so low for that. So even though it's not quite going my way in that day, I can hang on to those things that I still made it in And that's more than most people do on a given day. And maybe you shouldn't even be comparing yourself to other people anyway. That's more than you would have done if you would have just sat on the couch at home and being in misery and pain or whatever, right? And I also, like, when I'm dealing with pain, I will tell myself that your back is resilient. You can move this way. There's not necessarily anything wrong with you. Yes, it sucks, but that doesn't mean you can't do things, right? And like using that positive reinforcement almost and changing what the inner dialogue that's going on inside my head. Because I can let the echo go around of like, oh, you're broken. You'll never be the same. You've already hit your last PR. You peaked. You're washed up. You know, all those types of things.
Spiraling
You can
control.
you can spiral. You can let
Yeah.
it happen. You can let those voices echo around in your head. Or, you know, like with practice, and it is a skill. This isn't like a natural thing for me. I can be like, hey, like, this is better than where you were, like, you know, whatever, 6 years ago.
So you take the expectations of what you are planning for that day away.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
It's
good. I like
better
that.
Because again, like, it's better than nothing,
Yeah, you
right?
showed up.
Yeah, I still showed up.
Yeah.
And like, even though I squatted, whatever, 170, and I planned on squatting 200 that one day, and 120 felt heavy, at one point in time, 120 kilos was like 85% of my maximum. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Now, I could probably almost squat 120 for 100 reps. You know, I
Yeah.
might die by the end of it. But
Yeah.
like, you know what I mean? Like, it's
Yeah.
one of those things where you can also look at how far you've come.
Mm-hmm.
And it's hard
Yeah.
to do. It's easier said than done
Yeah.
for sure. But like, just remembering where you started, where you came from, and even reminding yourself of where you're going. I want to get off the toilet when I'm 90 by myself,
I do that every day.
right? Just
Yeah.
there's
every
some
day.
days when I was in the hospital and my back was flaring up a bit because you're bending over, picking people up and things like that, and walking and lots of movement. And when you're not used to it, pain response, whatever.
Yeah.
And I would see some people, you know, they would have trouble getting off a chair by themselves because, you know, again, they're not necessarily there because of their own volition, but like it's a lot harder to wind up in that state if you maintain strength, right? And I would want to skip the gym because I was tired and exhausted and not feeling like great. And then I'd be like hell, I'm going to skip because like I can help prevent this. Maybe, you know, there's obviously injuries and stuff that people are there not on their own volition. Again, I'm not saying like it's their fault all the time, but there are things we can do to mitigate it. And
Yeah,
that's
for sure.
really what I hang my hat on.
Yeah.
And that's what gets me to the gym a lot of the days that I don't want to go to the gym.
Danny?
Like I said, showing up's half the battle. There's an interview of I can't remember what sport it was in, but it was like an Olympic athlete, and she was like, "Oh, like I had a really bad training session," and then her coach reminded her of like, what is it, the rule of thirds or something like that. A third of your training is going to be okay. A third of your training is going to feel like shit, and then a third of your training is going to feel really good. And so I was like, wow. Now, obviously, that's just like an arbitrary thing to say. It doesn't mean anything, but like, I think in order to have good days, you got to have bad days. And like, as cliche as that sounds,
Yes.
it's so very true.
True.
And just like looking at those last two training sessions, in the grand scheme of things, like you said,
Doesn't matter.
knowing where you started to where we are now, I couldn't even fathom squatting what I squat now on a bad, shitty day and being upset about it when I started.
Yep.
So just knowing where you came from and knowing where you want to go, I think is, like you said, it takes skill and it's something to practice. So
Perspective.
perspective is huge.
Yeah.
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 You do develop it over time as well.
Yeah.
You do. And if you look at what, again, the two of you and a little bit of me with respects to what we're lifting comparatively, it's like, okay, if you have a bad day, it's no big deal.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's no big deal at
Yeah.
all when you're in the kind of the top 2% of the world.
I think the older I get, the less attached I feel to the weights. Granted, like I just said, I was like upset about it, but like younger me would have just like, I don't know,
Given up probably.
probably would have given up just like having a couple bad weeks of training versus now just like, again, it's part of the process.
Part of
Just
the
keep
process.
moving.
Hey,
Yeah.
you wouldn't know what a good day feels like if you didn't have a bad day, right?
Exactly.
Well, yeah. And if we
Yeah.
didn't have that, we'd have a linear projection to being the strongest
Oh yeah.
humans in whatever.
Yeah.
Like it just doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
So after your first year of lifting, you put like 100 pounds on your total or whatever. You're like, oh yeah, so in like 2 years, I should be
Yeah.
world champ
Do the math.
because I'll put 200 pounds on my total.
Okay. And that is that we talked about that 1 year powerlifting graveyard. I've had a lot of athletes come in, guns blazing, and they get really strong really quickly, and then they have all these aspirations. Oh, I'm gonna go to Worlds. I'm gonna get this record. Blah 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 blah. And then as soon as they fall short one time, they fall apart and then disappear. Gone.
So do you think that mentality then starts to guide their life? Like every time they run into that fence that they can't climb over, they just walk the other way.
I think so. Like if you're not
it's a bit of a personality.
Yeah.
Well, an experience too. Like if you're not used to resistance, then you don't know how to like handle it, right?
Yeah.
Because we've seen people like their psyche their psyche just snaps.
Yep.
It's like I can't. Well, I'm not strong anymore. Like I went backwards.
Yeah.
My E1RM didn't increase from last week, and it's like, wow, that's not really how that works. But like, you try and educate and stuff, but at the end of the day, like you can guide a horse to water, but you can't make him drink, right?
Yeah.
So it's like you can give all the advice and education that you can, but sometimes people like, well, they're not in the place in their life to receive it.
Yeah.
And people leave the sport, come back to the sport too. That happens, or lose the affinity for the gym and come back to it for a different reason later on in life, right?
Yeah.
And they just weren't in the right place for it, like at that time, right? I think that happens like quite a bit actually.
Oh yeah.
But like, it's not about, there's the bodybuilding company 3DMJ. There's these bodybuilders on that roster, the coaches, they're freaking jacked. The one guy, Jeff Alberts, right? He's almost 60 years old. Natural bodybuilder. He won the World Masters title and stuff like that. He is just absolutely jacked. But he was saying something along the lines of like, I've been doing lateral raises within like the 20 to 25, sometimes 30-pound range.
Yeah.
Like my whole life. But my delts are still growing, but I haven't been able to move that weight up because they're lateral raises. And I think you can apply that same idea to strength and all the other lifts as well. It's just like there's growth that happens that's not visual, and there's growth that happens that isn't on the graph in front of you for your estimated 1 rep max.
Yeah, growth is interesting and strength is interesting because if you look at it, there's still a huge progression just based on your beating the aging curve. Because we should be depleting, right? The strength curve should be dropping off. But if it's not, but it's not accelerating like when you were 35, guess what? You're still winning.
Yeah.
You're still growing. You're still getting stronger because you should theoretically be getting weaker, which is why in my 60s, 70s, and 80s, I still want to go to that next level.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah.
There's even like research now showing that like, I think it was like they looked at like 70-year-olds, 80-year-olds. They have the same ability to gain muscle mass as a 20-year-old, but relative amounts of muscle mass, 70 to 20. Like you can still gain this like relatively the same amount, right? Which is crazy. And people don't think of it that way because they don't exercise, right?
And what's interesting, have you guys heard of Dr. Peter Attia?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I got a chance to ask him on his podcast, which is more important, mass or strength? And he said strength. So if that nervous system continues to fire at optimal levels, it's probably even a little bit better than mass. Both are very, very important.
Yeah.
But it was just a little aside. And so it's like we're all heading in the right direction.
And why not have both? Right?
Why not have both?
Because you can't separate them from each other, because as you lift, you introduce demands. The skeletal muscle adapts. That's why all the world level powerlifters and weightlifters are jacked, right? Even though they spend most of the time training strength.
Yeah. Or the rate coding just gets better.
Or that too as well, right?
So that nervous system just is firing on all cylinders instead of 80%.
Yeah.
Which,
Yeah, you can actually use, your like the muscle fiber recruitment, they synchronize when you get better at strength, right?
Exactly.
So you get to use that skill in life, no matter what, if it's a coach you're lifting or something else, right? Like, it makes you more robust and resilient. But both strength and muscle mass are like big predictors for like all cause mortality and activity level.
And you know what? 2 is VO2.
Yeah.
And I was disappointed in that, but I understand it. It's disappointed, saddened a little bit.
Yeah.
Because that needs to be worked on.
But the neat thing is too, like even like cardiovascular exercise and like building up the aerobic system and the anaerobic system and stuff. Like there's it's not one or the other too. Like when you're in that sets of 10 on squat and you're breathing hard,
Totally.
like there's adaptations going all the way the other direction too,
Totally.
right?
Mhm.
And like good runners, like they resistance train because
Yeah.
they develop power in their stride. And like, power lifters and bodybuilders, they do some sort of cardio because you can handle more volume, right? And stuff like that.
Yeah, and I think more recently that's really become more mainstream.
Yeah.
Whereas maybe decade or two ago,
Yeah.
not a chance could weightlifting do anything beyond just what was obvious in strength.
Yeah.
But yeah, the overflow into the other kind of physiologies is pretty big.
Yeah. It's not like, again, these aren't switches you pull. Like it's not
No.
one versus the other, but like, the person in the hospital there that couldn't stand up off the chair one time by themselves.
Yeah.
Like they don't have strength, but they also don't have endurance.
Right.
But if we start doing like, elevated stands with this person and we kind of build that up over time, you're telling me they're not going to develop any changes to their VO2 max from that experience?
Yeah.
Their body will get better at using the oxygen that comes in. It has to, because you introduce the stress and then it's going to adapt to it, right?
Darwin loves you.
Right? Exactly, right? Like,
Just give them a little stimulus and watch them change.
Exactly, right?
Yeah.
And like that's really what it comes down to. And even like the whole cardiovascular side of things, you look at like the recommendations, the time demand for that versus like even resistance training, so much less actually, like you don't need much. And it's even a matter of just getting like, I think around like 6,000 steps a day.
Yeah.
Drastically drops off your all cause mortality, which
Yeah.
is, it's not a lot.
Yeah, they clean up the dosage a bit and it makes it pretty attainable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even like, I remember I had one day I was like super sick at home and I think I still got 1,000 steps in the day. Like I didn't even leave the house.
Yeah.
So you think about like trying to get like a few more thousand throughout the day. It's like, it's a very feasible task.
Yes.
Like
Yeah.
it goes a long way.
But pretty flabbergasting in the sense that a lot of people don't get that.
Yes.
Like, okay, if it's that easy to attain, but then the majority of the population are not getting there, that's a little scary.
Yeah. That's a bigger question of why. And
Yeah.
but there's a lot of factors, both like, biopsycho and social, right? Some people don't live in safe neighborhoods, so they can't walk when it's dark. And in Saskatchewan, it gets dark at 5 p.m. in the winter. So it's like they're not walking. And then it's also minus 50. So
Yeah. Negative statement would be like, humans are a little bit lazy by nature.
and that as well. I agree.
Carefully stated.
I agree.
I feel like the answer to that question is a little out of our scope.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's not necessarily out of our scope. We contribute to fighting
True.
against it.
True.
Yeah.
Right. And that's why I'm so big on the whole, like, I mean, like if I used to say to my personal training clients and I still say it to my powerlifting clients and stuff that like, if I die tomorrow, knock on wood, but like, I hope you could do this without me. And I hope you would.
Yes.
And, as time went on, clients leave, clients come, clients go, like, I would want them to continue doing these things, not because of me, but because of you and what it does to you,
Yeah.
right? And you see that, you recognize it, and you realize that it's not that hard to do, and you don't need much. Like there was that bit of research I shared in my presentation, but this chain gym, and then I think the Netherlands or something like that. They had like a gigantic sample size over 2 years. It was like almost like 15,000 people or something like that. I might be misquoting it, but basically they saw strength gains from 20 minutes of resistance training a week, 2
Wow.
years into someone's training cycle, well past the point of your newbie gains, right? They're still making strength gains with 20 minutes a week of resistance training.
Yeah.
And I think all they did was like the circuit on the machines.
Yeah.
You just a little bit of that, a little bit of this, and
Yeah.
you hit everything, right? Like it really does become that simple, right? And like fitness looks different for everyone.
Right.
I think that's where people get it wrong. They put too many barriers up for something that is relatively quite simple, right?
I think we do something similar with the physios that I want to give them enough tools and things that they can do so they don't need to call us.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah. So I can do this. And all of a sudden, oh, yeah, I'm working out of that pain again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's like you don't need me, right? As the physio, right? Like you don't feel dependent upon me, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Because that's not the way to raise a client. You know what I mean?
Correct.
Like you want them to be better off without you. Maybe
Yep.
they come back because it worked last time,
Yep.
right? That's kind of like the best way to approach it, I feel.
Well, if you look at a lot of the stuff out there, like acupuncture, chiro, massage, oftentimes there's not extra work given.
Yes.
You
Yeah.
go, you have, you leave. And that's a little different than physio because you come, you get a whole host of stuff, and I'll go away and do it.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah.
a little different.
Anything else there, Danny?
I love this convo, but I'm just keep looking at that time.
I know we've been. This might be the longest one we've ever
This
ever
is
done.
definitely-
Here.
Hours?
4 hours.
Flies by though. Hey,
Does it ever?
Yeah.
me and Danny regularly have this discussion almost every episode.
Yeah. I think we keep getting longer and longer though.
I
Really?
think we do. Yeah, I don't
Hopefully
know.
It's interesting.
I think it's been very interesting.
This has been an awesome.
But I agree. We should probably start closing it out here and whatnot. And yeah, I guess like again, Blaine, like thank you so much
Yeah.
for coming on this podcast. Like this has been
My pleasure.
awesome. Do you have any closing remarks or anything that you wanted to say? Maybe let the people know where they can find you and all that jazz too.
Yeah, our website, mackiephysio.com. And then anytime you want to call Mackie Physiotherapy, we got both the Evergreen and the Arlington clinics. And yeah, super receptive. Everybody has the same philosophy, even the front office staff. So it's what we can do for you. And so, yeah, you can reach out at any time. My personal email, blainemackey@shaw.ca. So I'm always on that, and you can get in contact with me if there's any questions or thoughts. And yeah, I'd just like to say thank you to Danny and Thomas. The honor's all mine with respects to be able to discuss this, and the first time ever I've put out my story. So I'm humbled that I can do it with you guys. So I appreciate the opportunity and giving me the platform to do it. So thank you very much, both of you.
It was our pleasure, man.
Yeah. It was awesome.
And yeah, we'll probably close it out there. Thanks again for listening to the Aches, Pains, and Gains podcast. Again, you can find all your coaching needs at Bridge City Barbell YXC or bridgecitybarbell.com, or check us out on Instagram, Bridge City Barbell YXC. You can also reach out to the Aches, Pains, and Gains.podcast with any questions for me, Danny, or even Blaine here. We can forward them on to him. If you guys have any urging, burning questions, or heck, maybe we even bring Blaine back on here for a little Q&A session sometime in the future. Which would be,
that'd be
which
good
would be
one.
fun. Yeah.
Yeah, it'd be good. I'd enjoy that, guys.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks again, folks. Anything else, Danny?
Oh, we're good.
All right. Peace.
Peace.